What's up, Miss Katie?
Hey V Lincoln, how are you though?
It's been a good one. Long time no talk.
Long time no talk. And thanks everybody who's jumping in. We're just going to go over what PulseChain launch is going to look like. Some strategies, some things for people to look at, ways for people not to get wrecked, and just things that people should really look at before they're going and really FOMOing, because you can tell the euphoria is starting to hit. So just taking a deep breath and actually looking at the facts that are in front of you when it launches. Hey Jenkins, I see you joined up as a speaker.
Good morning, Katie, from my side of the world.
I mean, technically, in half an hour, it's morning here, so good morning.
You pulling an all-nighter for PulseChain over there?
No, I just have sleeping issues. I don't sleep very much, to be honest.
Well, that's good. Well, I wanted to just stop in and say shout out to you for what you're doing. I see Jesse in here too. What's good, Jesse? Just wanted to shout you out for what you're doing. You're making waves on Twitter, reaching, it seems like tens of thousands of people, soon enough, hundreds of thousands of people. So just keep doing what you're doing. I'm not going to stick around too long, but I didn't even think you were going to have me speak. So I just clicked the request button to see what happened, honestly. But yeah, so to shout out to you and shout out to everyone here. I'm excited for PulseChain. I'm a little too excited right now, actually. So super optimistic, fully bullish, and I'm supporting everybody that's bullish here too. So I'm on the Katie train.
Let's go.
Appreciate everything you do, Jenkins, and of course, I would let you up to speak. Twitter is one thing and aliases are another, but I actually really like Twitter Spaces because you get to have conversations with people in here. I think it's awesome. And like Twitter, for instance, tweets, they can reach tens of thousands of people, and most of them are Hopium based. But when you're actually in a Twitter space, you can talk about things properly with people, not just, over a space. I mean, like a thread, so to speak. So I guess the room is filling up, so I guess we'll start. So everybody knows PulseChain's getting close to launching now. So what are the things that we actually need to look at when it's launching? So there's still a lot of people that are speculating about what the AMM does, and thinking that the AMM is going to provide a lot of liquidity for people to trade out of their forked over ERC20 tokens. And that's not the case. So you're seeing with V3 and you're seeing with V4, the AMM bot's whole entire purpose is to correct the market caps of the forked over tokens. So the whole entire purpose of the AMM bot is to make sure that after we increase the supply of 1.2 million for Pulse, to make sure that the forked over tokens have the chance to thrive because their market caps are skewed and off balance. So the AMM bot goes out and buys up forked over liquidity pairs, and it only buys up the ETH to ERC20 pairs or wrapped ETH to ERC20 pairs, and redeploys just a fraction of that liquidity into PulseX to correct the market caps. Now, that does provide some liquidity for people to trade in between, but if you were to use Poseidon's app that he made public to the community on V3 and on V4 to actually look at every single liquidity pool that there was, you would see that it was a very small fraction that was redeployed. It was close to 2%, moving down towards like 1% realistically on V4. So when you jump on like a DEX screen or a DEX tools right now, and you look at an ERC20 to an ETH pair in the liquidity pool, you need to think about 1% of that liquidity pool being redeployed with Pulse on the other side. So if your game plan is to hold some of these other ERC20 tokens to trade in between them, or HEX, for instance, HEX for me isn't a token that's meant to be overly traded. When you look at the HEX liquidity pool pairs, it's been very thin for the last 6 months. So it doesn't matter when the fork happened. HEX's liquidity, there's a high chance it's not going to be thick liquidity. So when you're first trading, some other people were speculating that it's just PLSX, PLS, HEX, and segregated tokens, so to speak. But it's not the entire state that's going to be there to ratio trade. But when you're ratio trading, you need to look at the liquidity pools that you're ratio trading in between. So if you're looking to even move between Pulse and PulseX, and you're going to go heavy FOMO and press that button and try and move even 20 million tokens over, there might not be that much liquidity there at the very beginning, and then then you wreck yourself. So you're seeing on V4, somebody fat fingered, just testing around, trying to see what happened, but they FOMO'd to the ratio. So the ratio starts at 1.06 to 1, obviously favoring Pulse. The community quickly pushed that to 1 to 3, but people thought that was a great buying opportunity because they watched on V3 that people would take it to 7 to 1, etc. So somebody fat fingered and there wasn't any liquidity there, and they ended up making it one Pulse bought 65,000 PulseX. Like, it was a crazy ratio. So when you're actually trading, you're not just trying to find a price of a token over there to be able to even grasp what you're trading in that ratio. You're also looking at the liquidity that you're moving your tokens in between, because there's always going to be somebody on the other side of that trade. Okay, so if you wreck yourself, there's going to be somebody sitting there waiting for you to make that 1 to 65,000, because they're going to profit off you. So without a dollar value, you're still being exit liquidity to people because you're the one that's opening up the better trades to people. So that's not to say don't ratio trade, because I think there is a lot of opportunities and a lot of people agree with ratio trading because of that. So if you can trade 3 pulse X for 1 pulse and then later trade back for 7 of the token you moved out of, well, you've gained more tokens than what you had. But the thing is to check your liquidity that you're moving in between and check what you're actually doing before you go rush and fat finger. I don't know if you want to add anything to ratio trading, Jesse.
Jesse's got the kids with him today, so he's going to be in and out. Katie.
The joys of having no children. Sorry, Jesse.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's like on the road. He'll be in and out.
The other thing is, it's been 2 years. So if you had a sacrifice wallet, I would really suggest you move your wallet, like your tokens, if it's not secure anymore, to a brand new wallet before you try and rush in a ratio trade. If you're worried about having been compromised, or you're worried because you didn't have your seed phrase on a hardware wallet, and you've heard so much about these hardware wallets now, first thing you should do is move your tokens before you run off and play. So when I'm talking about checking the liquidity, Poseidon has an app that he is building for the community. He deployed it within minutes, really, on V4, and he'll have it straight away on mainnet. I'm not sure if everybody in the room knows who he is. I share his content sometimes, and I put his app on my Twitter thread, and I will be doing it again on mainnet. So pretty much what it is just a plain basic front end where you can go in there and type in the liquidity pools that you want to find. So maybe you just want to find every single liquidity pool pair that's paired to Pulse. So whether it's SHIB to Pulse or HEX to Pulse, anything that's on there, it'll scan through and find you every single liquidity pool pair that there is. So that's a great asset to have in the community. And that also shows you the depth of liquidity that's in that pair itself. Then you also have the information tab on PulseX. So when you hit the 3 dots at the top and you press info and you move over to liquidity and into the pools. But just remember, when you're looking at that, the issue at the very start is there's no dollar value. So you're just looking at depth. So without dollar value, again, you have to reconsider what you're doing. When you're trying to consider dollar value, one of the only things that we have that we can try and find value over there for is HEX. And that's trying to speculate what we think PHEX is going to be again. And that is purely speculation. I don't know if Jenkins actually wants to tune in with HEX, because I know you watch HEX a lot. Do you have any idea where you think it'll start?
So I, of course, think like it'll initially have a cheap starting price, but just knowing Richard Hart and all the time he spent in his previous project and this current project and all the brains behind it, I don't imagine it being low for too long. Like in terms of like, I don't even think it's going to be sub penny for that long. I would imagine we'd see price parity like sooner rather than later. I would hope, as a market participant, that HEX would stay low. I can't give you a price. I'm not going to be that crazy. I'm not going to throw a price out there. I just say low for this, but I would hope as a market participant that HEX could start off low and give all of us, insanely cheap rates to buy into. But I just don't imagine it being that way. Yeah, it's tough. I really don't. I mean, I have some ideas. I don't want to like throw too much out there because, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I can't say too much. But I'll just say this much. I don't think HEX will be that cheap for that long, and I also don't think you'll get cheaper rates than sacrifice prices on Pulse or PulseX. And for the ratio trading game, I'm a person that like I'm not like a trader anymore, but I still do my thing. I would not advise anybody to play that game. I wouldn't ratio trade any of the tokens, unless, obviously if people missed a certain sacrifice and not the other one, that's one thing. But it's going to be a really intense time, high volatility, without really much price discovery. I would just advise everybody to chill, wait till you could accumulate, and just accumulate all of them, because we're so early on every coin, no matter how many days it takes for you to actually get in and add to your bag. So I'll just say that much. Sorry. I wish I could have given you a better answer.
Richard Hart is awake.
I actually think it was great. Yeah, I think everybody's seen that tweet in the first 2 minutes of it going out. But Jenkins, I actually just want to echo what you said, and I think it's great advice. I would wish that a lot of people won't ratio trade, but I know that they will. And unfortunately, some people will get wrecked. That's why if we're talking about ratio trading, I at least want people to look at the liquidity pools before they're going and doing it, and seeing if there's depth before they go move into them. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do. But ratio trading is highly speculative because you really don't know what the price of anything is going to start at, especially other tokens. So some people have like a game plan of getting PRC20 tokens. That's highly speculative as well and based on communities, really.
I will say this much real quickly, without giving too much info, but based on like, I guess, analyzing the Twitter market, quote unquote, I feel like a lot of people are going to, I guess, FOMO into Pulse early. And then a lot of people are going to try jumping on Pulse X, assuming there is that big dip. I feel like, which sounds crazy, I feel like PHEX is going to be overlooked because of Pulse and Pulse X. And this might be the only time ever, again, where we see a hex product, E or P, actually be overlooked. So I do hope for, as a market participant, a nice little discount on the PHEX side, because the fact of the shiny new objects that are Richard Hart products that people will be trying to get into early on. So I'll say that much. Like, my focus, because I sacrifice for both of them and I'm comfortable with my bags, at least early on, my focus is PHEX. So I got my eyes on that.
I was sitting here thinking about various strategies and what might happen later on. And I thought, I'd never heard this term, buy and bridge. Do you remember when everyone was buying and sacrificing hex, for the PulseChain sacrifice, PulseX sacrifice? Buy hex, sacrifice it, buy hex, sacrifice it. I think moving forward, since PulseRamp only has limited assets that you can actually bridge, some stable coins, maybe some Pulse or Wrap Pulse, depending on what direction you're coming from, you could actually see some pumpamentals with the bridge itself, right? So say when the bridge goes live and you're like, and of course this isn't the pre-ratio stuff, but I just had to like get these thoughts out because they've been like contained in my head for 12 hours. But imagine you want to bridge some value in to PulseChain and you're like, oh, what should I buy? USDC, DAI, whatever. Oh, I might as well just buy hex, however much value, bridge that in. Remember, there's always a fee going through that pulse ramp. So it's almost like a buy and burn kind of, right? We'll call it the buy and bridge.
Yeah, I like that, Jesse. And that hasn't really been talked about.
And that'll have effects on the ETH, price, when people are bridging in value from wherever into PulseChain, if they just put that value into hex and bridge that in, yeah, we got a really cool buy and bridge going on.
I like it. Fees get locked up. You just don't know where the fees are going yet. But I see a lot around the community. Jenkins said it too, that everybody thinks some things are going to go below SAC prices, especially PulseX. I see a lot of people speculating about PulseX. Some people are even saying 90% below SAC prices. And I don't see it, to be honest. Like, Pulse has so much FOMO around it right now, and there's only like 60,000 wallets that are in that sacrifice set. And there's hundreds of thousands of people looking at it. I personally know of a bunch of capital that's sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy into it. So to speculate it's going to go below SAC prices, I don't think so. But I do think you're going to have a bunch of great buying opportunities in the first 3 months. So like, if you look at every blockchain that's launched, the first 3 months are up and down constantly, especially when there is an ICO. So when you're looking at PulseChain sacrifice, for instance, if it launches at 3 zeros and a 1, well, there's a bunch of people that got a 2x multiplier. They're already sitting at a 2x. So there's, fair to say, if it does a 5x, some people like to take out their investment and let the rest run. So it can stagnate for 3 odd months and be some of the best buying opportunities. You've seen it with Hex, even though it is slightly different, where Hex had a giveaway at the start to Bitcoin holders. So airdrops and free giveaways usually causes a dip in the price at the very beginning. So don't think that you miss out, because the first 3 months of newly launched blockchains have some of the best buying opportunities, as well as other tokens. So if you're a DCA type of person, look for red candles the whole way along, and don't go FOMOing and putting your whole entire bag in like week 1 when the bridge opens. Hey, LV.
Hey, good morning. I just want to reiterate what you were saying, and I do think we'll see some silly pricing, because we cannot underestimate the power of emotion. Emotional trading is how we end up seeing a lot of these crazy things in crypto. Knee-jerk reactions, folks who are like, fear is a very strong emotion, greed is a very strong emotion. Could we see prices that go really stupid low in some cases? I think it's a real possibility. People have been waiting for 2 years. Some people are desperate just to exit because they want to hop into their next peppy meme coin or something. I mean, who knows, right? And not necessarily judging, because the whole point of crypto is everyone gets to do whatever the hell they want to do with their tokens. But I would say, we're talking about a large set of users, not all of which may be quite savvy, not all of which may have been paying attention over the past 2 years, since they kind of threw some tokens into a wishing well. So there's always a possibility that we see a lot of emotional trading in the market. And to your point, there will be opportunities as a result of that. So I think the smart thing to do, like we're discussing this morning, is weigh out your plan, have some options, have some goals. What is it that you want? What is it that you want to achieve? What do you want to accumulate? What is it that you want to get out of? kind of lay out these plans, have an idea of what types of pricing or ratios you might be looking for, timing and things like that. So you don't have to make every decision up on the fly as the market's doing insane, silly, crazy things, right? Emotion is going to be your enemy. So take the emotion out of the equation and, go in with a rational head, focus on what it is that you want to accomplish, and, just keep your eye on the prize, right? There's going to be shiny things. There's going to be crazy spikes. There's going to be crazy dips, right? And if you go and you chase all these things and you're chasing the chart, you're never going to, kind of hit that goal. So that's all I can say is just be smart and think it all through. Have your exit plan already laid out, right, in your head. So then all you have to do is enact it. And by all means, take this time right now and practice on testnet. Get into PulseX, learn how to navigate it, learn how to research the different pairs and the ratios and how to calculate things. Get used to it. This is our last chance. So, the more educated and prepared we are, the less insanity we'll experience in the heat of the moment. Okay, because that's when mistakes are made. That's all I can say.
Hello, everybody. It's good
Morning,
to
Admiral.
Hi, good to talk to you. I agree with what you say with regarding people that are going to emotionally trade a lot within the first really probably of this launch, and I wish I could cryogenically freeze them, some of them, and so they wouldn't have to degen and risk impermanent loss. That's it. It's weird. I've had a lot of people DM me, what's your strategy? And my name's Hodpro. Like, just hold until the volatility is down and make a relatively safe and safe system that you're not going to get wrecked from. I mean, Power City's front end, to be honest, is a really good way to analyze visually what your strategy is, because some people are just not organized with what they want to do. And seeing it out in front of you, if you have to get a piece of paper and write out your plan, have it visually available so you're not thinking emotionally, because I'm afraid, part of me is afraid to look at Twitter and see who ratio trades, depending on the gap between, and gets wrecked because they don't know, like with Katie was talking about the liquidity pools, like thin liquidity pools, don't mess with them, but people don't know what to look for. People aren't even knowing why people are necessarily front running the price on Hex too, as it's going down. And just, if you don't know completely what you're going to do, if you don't have a chart, if your room doesn't look like some schizo bunch of papers with red lines, red arrows pointing to each individual post-it note, just hold for a little while until things settle down. That's my strategy.
Thank you for sharing, Hodpool. You're great, just to let you know. But you are 100%
You're welcome.
right. You're both right, to be honest, you and LB. So, like, if anybody was looking at Twitter, there was a few community members that were kind of giving shit to certain individuals that played emotional trading. So a certain Zen token went moving, and somebody dumped a bunch of Hex to go buy it, and then they ended up on the red side of Zen, and then they dumped their Zen to come back to the FOMO green candle in Hex. Like, that's emotional trading, and that's how you lose your value. Like, going and chasing a green candle, it just makes you exit liquidity for somebody else. So, like, just don't do things out of emotion. Base them on smart decisions. And sometimes that is just by taking a 2-second sit back and looking what you're doing. So, like, talking about liquidity pools, for instance, when the bridge first opens, the worst thing you could do is just rush and bridge in whatever token it is that you're holding and go try trade it in the pool. Because when you're talking about the bridge opening, people on Ethereum actually have to bridge over their value and put up liquidity into PulseX. So when you go trade in Uniswap right now, there is a lot of liquidity, but that liquidity is market participants. So that's a Jenkins in the room putting up Hex to USDC to be a liquidity pool provider. That's market participants allowing people to trade in between their value so that they can earn fees. So when the bridge first opens, you don't have a guarantee that there's going to be liquidity on the other side, and you don't have a guarantee that the tokens that you hold will have the liquidity over there. So before you rush and bridge over, you need to actually look at what are other people doing? What are the whales doing? Who bridged over Hex? Who bridged over DAI? Who bridged over USDC? And who made pools in PulseX for me to trade in? So, like, you might be holding USDC on Ethereum, for instance, and you want to go buy Pulse, but there might not be a USDC to Pulse pair on PulseX, or there might not be enough liquidity for you to trade. So if you have 100,000 and you want to go bridge that over and think you're just going to buy it up, you're not going to, because there won't be enough liquidity for you. If you have $100, you still don't have a guarantee that there's going to be liquidity on the other side unless you actually check. So before you go bridging over tokens, you have to go to the information page on PulseX. You have to look at what liquidity pools are open, what the depth of the liquidity is. And when I mean depth, I mean like what's the liquidity amount that's sitting in there. So when there is a dollar value, is it 4 million? Is it 5 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 1 million? Or is it 10,000? Because people will provide liquidity. So if you hop on Dex Screener or Dex Tools and look at some liquidity pools, some have next to no value in them. So there's certain derivatives in the community that were more for holding, not for liquidity purposes and trading. So they have really thin pools. So people trade in between them and they lose a lot of value in those trades, okay, because the liquidity is thin. So you need to look at what you're holding and what liquidity is over there, because chances are you're going to have to trade on Ethereum in a DEX to a different token before you even bridge it over to go trade. So ratio trading can get you wrecked, but trading once the bridge opens can get you twice as wrecked as ratio trading. If you want to FOMO in week one or day one, anytime in the first month, really, chances are that you can get extremely wrecked if you don't go check what liquidity is there. And like, if you don't know how to do it, try and jump on Dex Screener and Dex Tools and follow some of the other people in the community that talk about liquidity. I'm pretty sure Jenkins is actually one of the people that do follow the liquidity. You have several people in the community that do. People that track the HEX liquidity, for instance, they're likely going to track that liquidity on PulseChain. So if you don't know how to do it yourself, follow the people that are watching it, because you don't want to bridge over and get wrecked, because it really hurts when you get wrecked, especially if you're trading in pools and don't know what you're doing. I've been wrecked before and it hurts. So just saying.
What I would tell people, what I have been telling people around me too, in regards to the whole Pulse like drama, what's going to happen, what are people going to do? I just been telling everyone like, hey, you didn't sacrifice and hold for this long just to lose out on that bag before the actual bull market starts. You know, we're not in a bull market right now. The bear market might just be over, but usually when bear markets end, we stay sideways for a while. We don't just instantly pump. Granted, new coins, meme coins, whatever, the shiny new objects, those coins will pump right out the get-go, you know, once they start, you know, getting momentum. But what I've been telling people around me is like, make your focus this, like at the very least, the 2024, 2025 bull market, at the very minimum, if you do sell and you cash out and you change your life with whatever gains you want to cash out, make your goal, like the bare minimum bag you have is what you sacrifice. You don't want to go lower than what you sacrifice. So in my perspective, there's still a lot of work to do. I don't want to have a single coin lower than what I sacrificed for Pulse or PulseX or any other project I sacrificed for. So the work to still be done is okay. If we do get fortunate enough, which I think we will, to get some dips early on, buy. This is not financial advice, by the way, but buy, because when you sell one day, it's not like Hex where you can sell a bag and then your T-shares are giving you more. If you sell your Pulse or PulseX, obviously just in general, once you're done, you're kind of done. And yeah, you didn't wait 2 years just to, you know, make some moves in the first couple of weeks or months and miss out on the actual run of the bull market, because it's going to pump before the bull market and then it's going to mega pump during the bull market. And then it's going to have its own bull market like how Hex did back in 2021.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, we got our boomer on board.
All right. Good morning, everybody. The baby boomer on board. What's happening?
What's up, Mike? One time in the house. Good to see you, man.
Thank you, brother Toshi. You know, I've been troubled. I've been actually verklempt over this issue. And, you know, now that we have some fashion experts on, I'm challenged. I don't know what I should wear for the launch. Should I go formal? Should I go maybe a business casual? You know, should I wear maybe some Chuck E. Tees and Lulu's, a tight T-shirt, extra tight T-shirt, and my PulseChain hat? You know, I'm kind of mixed up. I don't know what I should wear. I think this is a very important thing. A lot of people listening right now, I think we all want to know what to wear.
I think you should do definitely the Chuck Tees with like dress shorts and a suit jacket, dude, and your PulseChain hat.
Whoa, I didn't think about that. That's kind of like what Jesse was talking about, buying and burning, right? Or bridging and burning. I could bridge and burn my outfit. That's what that sounds like. That's brilliant.
I know what you should wear.
Yes.
You should wear a straight jacket to force you to hold.
Yes.
I will, and hopefully my bags will be full, young lady. I love everybody. This is the greatest community. I am so ecstatic about what's about to happen. My strategy, I'm holding to 2024 and 2025. Love you all. On my way to a massage. Thanks for the opportunity. God bless everybody.
One time. Thanks, man. Love you, brother.
Bye, Michael. So Michael is our baby boomer on board, but he's also a really pivotal part to the community. For people that don't know him, they should quickly follow him before he does duck out of here. So Michael and Toshi Flow are the two people that are bringing boxable tiny homes to PulseChain. So they're bringing the 10,000 tiny homes that are going to be sold as NFTs that are redeemable for a VIP queue in their manufacturing line. So they have like 136,000 people in the wait line, and these guys have VIP slots for people, but they have to come buy them on PulseChain. And Elon Musk just partnered with Boxable Tiny Homes. So it's got great networking, and it's honestly an amazing company that they're building. So these two are bringing an exclusive to PulseChain. So if you don't know Michael, that's who he is. He is our baby boomer, but he is a super important part to this community. So thank you, Michael. And one other thing that I think people should really think about is when you're looking at emotional traders again, there's a lot of people that waited 2 years for PulseChain, right? So there's no guarantee that PulseChain is going to have the price performance that people are expecting in the first month, the first 6 months even, because we aren't at a bull market yet. So if it was launching today, there is a chance that it could be sideways for 3 months, 6 months. You know, that's relatively fair to say. So it could be some people that get emotional that it doesn't do what they expected as quick as they expected. And that brings, you know, emotional trading again, which gives you, the community and people in this room, the opportunity to buy in. So again, if you don't get in the first week, you don't get in the first month, that doesn't mean you're not going to have the best buying opportunities.
So the highest of stakes had this tweet where they're continuing on, I guess, their video where they want people to send in their reactions after the PulseChain launch. So it would be terrible if somebody had their expectations crushed and then filmed that reaction and they put it in the film. It'd be quite. But, you know, for the most part, it'll probably be a very positive thing, but or it breaks even and they just have no response. You know, they just send it into the highest stakes. That's exactly what I sacrificed. Oh.
That is a great point, Hopeful, and I actually would personally love to see just one person of disappointment in amongst all the people that are hyping and full of euphoria in the moment. That would be pretty funny. Hey, DX.
Hey, Katie. I just wanted to add, like, if you've got PulseX and you don't have Pulse, you can always just wait for the single-sided staking. Use that yield to purchase Pulse. That would be one way of avoiding getting wrecked.
So you do have a good point, but I have said before, and I do continue to say it, and I don't mean to FUD, but so testnet does give some unrealistic expectations with single-sided staking to what it is in general. So like when you have a testnet, for instance, people have tokens aside and they give you a bigger APR and APY just to give you the visualization of what happens there. The PRTY tokens are third-party projects. So, you know, when you have an established ecosystem, it's a great, amazing tool to have in a DEX because it's a different way of doing like an airdrop, so to speak. So instead of airdropping, you know, 1 million of your token supply to maybe hex stakers or something, for instance, you can put them in the single-sided staking pools for people with PulseX to stake into those pools to earn those tokens. But the tokens aren't PRTY or mainnet, they are projects putting up those tokens. So you have to wait for projects to start deploying. You have to wait for PulseX to kind of start flourishing, so to speak, so that other projects are incentivized to put liquidity in there because it gives them a marketing tool, so to speak, you know, because then you have a PulseX community that are talking about their free tokens that they just got for single-sided staking. You now have more people talking about these tokens because they just got them for free. They also have the exposure of PulseX by being in those pools. So the single-sided staking is an amazing feature. It is great for the ecosystem, but it is something that is more thriving in a well-established ecosystem, which can take 3 to 6 months for single-sided staking to really kick off. So I would just say, again, with expectations, don't have your expectations shattered and be emotional if single-sided staking isn't what you expected in the first few months, and allow the ecosystem to grow and establish before that thing really flourishes. That's my only input with single-sided staking.
Yeah, I appreciate the response. Yeah, I agree. I just mean from a perspective if you're looking to DCA, it's probably not a bad kind of thing to do, and you're not like wanting to ratio trade or do any of that.
So there is the ink token as well that some people have a bit of game theory around. Personally think that there's going to be some protocols being built to give it more utility and more use case, more so than just a token that liquidity pool providers will dump instead of the fees that they're earning or their tokens that they hold. So the incentive token is an added fundamental, so to speak, to PulseX. So by giving large whales an incentive token, it gives them more incentive to want to provide liquidity onto this DEX. But the other thing that I would say, don't have expectations just yet until we hear from Richard, is on V3 and V4. If some people didn't notice, the PulseX DAO wasn't on them. So on V2B, you've seen the code, it was majority finished, but it wasn't finalized, so to speak, publicly on V2B. And then when V3 launched, we didn't have the DAO, we didn't have proposals. But when you actually look into the ink token and the contract itself, it still has the same functionality there, where the ink token emissions are spread across multiple different addresses that are chosen and put in there. So the LP addresses are locked in, and then a certain percentage goes to those pools as well. So whatever, that's one ink token per second is the emission rate for ink. And then ink is distributed by a percentage to selected pools. Now, because we didn't see the DAO on V3 or V4, there is a chance that it could just be an anonymous actor, or maybe we do have the DAO back. So again, that's another thing that no expectations, but when mainnet goes live, that is something that I'll be looking at as well. Personally, I think everybody else in the room should as well, because that does play out and open up other different scenarios for the community to contemplate as well. So yeah. One other thing that I got asked today was the forked over stablecoins. I don't know if Jesse will want to come up and talk because it's stablecoins. I know he's busy with his children, but the forked over stablecoins are probably not going to hold value. The reason why they hold value is because they're redeemable for something. So, you know, they can be redeemed back for a US dollar, or for instance, liquidity on Ethereum. What's it called? LUSD can be redeemed for ETH underlying collateral, but it can't be redeemed anymore on the forked over side. So stablecoins are very unlikely going to be holding any value at all. So maybe if you were looking at ratio trading and you do hold some stablecoins,
be worth $1. And really the only way that they ever stay worth $1 is because they're redeemable for $1. So when you just photocopy something, now you have a whole bunch of stablecoins that aren't really backed by anything at all. There's no collateral backing them anymore. There's no redemption mechanism. You can't, you know, buy a cheap USDC that you find, you know, selling for, you know, a penny or 10 cents, and then expect that you're going to send that to Circle and they'll give you $1 for it, right? So they're really not worth, you know, you can't redeem them. Now there could be value in them. The community could say, oh, we want to buy these because they're cheap. And there's, you know, narratives here and there. Hey, let's pair our copied over stablecoins to the real bridged-in stablecoins. But I think that's kind of risky, because people will just trade the unredeemable thing for the redeemable thing, which will just continue to like black swan send to zero the stablecoin, like the copied over one, right? So unfortunately, I think that's how it's going to go. Right, markets are irrational, but I think that's how it's going to go with all the stable coins. There's also a significant amount of large whales that I think are already planning on just dumping out of those. So don't expect much out of your copied over stable coins, I'd say. But have hope, because there are native stable coins launching pretty soon after PulseChain goes live.
go be Lincoln. And sorry, Jesse, I don't mean to laugh. Every time someone says stablecoins, Jesse will come running.
I've been seeing a lot of speculation that maybe we could touch on. Here's some people's opinion on the snapshot. Has it happened? Has it not happened? When's it going to happen?
This one is a trap. I publicly said my opinion and it was not well received, so I instantly revoked it and said sorry to the people that I made unsettled by my comment. So this one's a trap, and I revoke. I'm out.
I mean, technically, go ahead, April.
Oh. Okay, technically, Bretep debunked the theory that the snapshot happened on April the 12th, the Shanghai update. But that's all I can remember of fact of the actual snapshot.
If you look at what went into getting V4 up and running, when they had to make the change for the validator rewards, there's a series of events that took time, right? So they made the code change, but then they needed to spool up and sync new nodes and distribute those and get 4,096 of them up and running, et cetera. That takes time. So my assumption, and that's all it is an assumption. So I'm going to make an ass out of me, not you. My assumption is, that block height has already been selected. The nodes are already being synced. They're already up and running. They're running the fixer bot. They're getting everything ready, right? Because you can't launch and then do that, right? We've already seen that in multiple iterations now. V3 and V4 we've seen by the time it's announced, all that is done. So my assumption is just that point in time has already been picked. The work is being done. And when it's actually ready and verified, it'll be shared with us, right? That's what I think.
So I guess my only comment is, and I really hope that somebody would counter me and even potentially educate me, because, that's part of the reason why I speak so much and why I don't mind talking, is because I like when people counter me. I like when people teach me. So that's why I openly speak constantly. But for me, I think that when you're forking a blockchain, obviously you have a genesis block. So if you're forking a full system state copy, that is a certain block height, and then you create your genesis block. And then from your genesis block, everything's defined in it. So your new chain, your new network, its token balances, its state, so to speak, is defined in that genesis block. And then from that genesis block, you then sync your nodes. So your Aragon node, your clients, because those clients that are going to now run your consensus have to be synced to your new chain or your new network's code and logic, so to speak. So the syncing happens after the genesis block, and the genesis block defines the state of the whole entire chain. And the genesis block also defines things like the inflation of Pulse. That's why they had to deploy a V4, because they can't just change the inflation of Pulse with an EIP. It doesn't work like that. So they had to make a whole new genesis block. And then the genesis block also defines the total supply. You can't mint any more PLS once the genesis block happens. And then thinking of nodes, I thought an Aragon node took 7 days, but I think Gamma corrected me and said it took 3 weeks to sync a full Aragon node. So just those things in place, you have to backdate. So if you think Richard's definite about he's in the next 7 days, we're launching. Go Jenkins. Anyway, so if you're thinking we're launching in the next 7 days, you have to backdate all of those things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So P-Burn had his hand up. Go ahead, bud.
Yo, everybody! Thank you very much, and an honor to talk to you, to see you, Katie, in a voice chat. Jenkins, hey. Yeah, I wanted to add to the topic before where you talked about the PLS and PLSX sacrifice. I wanted to remind you, like those who already have sacrificed, that all the time we had all these third-party projects that washed in new investors or new participants for the PulseChain, and that means that something special could happen on the charts. So it could be for us that it's unexpected, but it's because of the influence of those investors which are not trading like normal hexicans. So that means that that the influence to the blockchain is different than from the hexicans.
Thanks for coming up and sharing. I will just say to the room, everybody is welcome to come up and ask questions and share. My Twitter personally is glitching, so I'm not going to really touch my phone much, and I can't see anybody requesting. So if my co-host can,
I got it, Katie.
all on them. That's good. Thanks.
We're gonna bring Pepe up.
One of the other things that I did see in the community was a lot of people kind of throwing their arms in the air about one of Richard's tweets, talking about the fact that a validator can send their rewards to a null address, and everybody saying, why would they do that? Like, what would be the reason for it? And one of the reasons would be no expectations from the work of others. So they can't just go out and tell you what they're going to be doing. But we did see with V3 and V4, when they deployed the network, one of the ways that they mitigated consensus level attacks on PulseChain was to deploy with 4,096 validators. That's just to stop one entity getting control of 51% of the network, and obviously with stake in the network, okay? So that is a mitigation that the team have to undergo themselves to protect PulseChain, which is bullish because, again, they're doing everything under their wing to protect PulseChain and stress test it. I can hear you, but I'm glitchy, so you might not hear me. But with their validators, there's a chance that they don't need the rewards that are coming from those 4,096 validators. So maybe it's the team that are sending their rewards to null addresses, not necessarily telling other validators to send theirs to null addresses. So there's a thing called no expectations, and Richard can't always write point blank what he's trying to do. We sometimes have to be speculative on what he's writing. So I don't think he was trying to say, hey, run a validator and send your rewards to a null address, because that would be insanity, really, to be honest, because then validators are running at a net negative, which isn't necessarily something anybody would do, to run at a net negative, have outgoing costs but no income or no rewards. But it could be fair to say that there are 4,000 odd validators that they're deploying. Well, Pulse that would be inflated, the supply inflation that would go to them as a reward, potentially will never go anywhere besides to a burn address. So there's constant burn on Pulse as well, will further burn, so to speak. So sometimes there's other aspects that you need to look at when people are talking about those things. And I did see some people around the community not think that all those validators were the team, but they are definitely the team that are deploying those validators. And it's to protect PulseChain. It's not to control the network, so to speak. It is just truly to protect PulseChain and mitigate 51% attacks, etc.
Good point, Katie. Guys, and if you haven't shared the space yet, share it for us. Let's try and get as many people in there as we can. Pepe, go ahead, bud.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity to share my excitement and joy. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Katie, you are knocking it out of the park. I truly want to thank you for your persistence, your constancy. And in that light, one of the launch day strategies that I would like to suggest to every Hexican that has been on this somewhat grueling 2-year journey is take a moment for those around you that have helped you on this journey, that have supported you, and let them know that you love them. Whether it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a wife, husband, just take a moment and be grateful because they've been at your side for 2 years, and today is redemption time. Think about taking care of them like they've taken care of all of us through all these trying times. And so I think what I'm really asking is to consider being a better person and thank all those around you that have gone on this thrill ride that they didn't buy a ticket for, but they went on it with you nonetheless because they believed in you. So that's all I
I love
wanted
you,
to say.
Pepe.
That's awesome. I love that, man. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's really important, guys. Take a minute. Great advice, bro. Thank you.
Hey, Top Gun.
Hello, Katie. Thank you very much for having me up. I had a quick question. I wanted to just go backtrack and clarify a little bit about something you were talking about earlier with PulseX. I'm sure many people in this room know how much I go on about the buy and burn, but realistically, the ability to stake the tokens for potentially third-party tokens that might be airdropped on the network, or to have the DAO ability to vote on what projects may be allowed for that kind of staking. That was a very big selling point for me. I was very excited about that capabilities that were on version V2B. But so did I hear you correctly say that the DAO function does not seem to be in the smart contract for PulseX on V3 and V4? And does that mean, I haven't gone in and checked, but does that mean that the potential staking for third party is also removed? Sorry if I misunderstood that.
The single-sided staking feature is 100% not removed. It is still there. It is 100% there. I just said that it could take, 3 months for it to really start flourishing. So when you go onto testnet, some people got the false hope that it would be flourishing from day one and they could stake and earn a large APY. And I just said, sometimes you just have to give those things a little bit of time for the ecosystem to actually develop. Okay, for projects to start launching, for tokens to start deploying, for people to allocate a certain percentage of their new token to those pools for people to stake into them to receive. So single-sided staking is 100% still there. It's still a feature. Part of the reason why you don't see it necessarily on testnet is because it's a working feature that they already have. So features can be easily implemented at any point in time. As for the DAO, I just said no expectations. In the ink token itself, for instance, the code is there for it to have the addresses determined for the LP pairs and for the percentage of those LP pairs to be determined. But we haven't seen the DAO. So I just said, you have to wait for Richard on that one because there's a chance the DAO will be there and there's a chance the DAO won't be there. It's kind of like a 50-50, just throwing a conversation out, so to speak, Top Gun, and maybe pre-warning people to, there's a lot of things in store for us that are going to be exciting and surprising, and there's a lot of things that might catch some people a little bit off guard. So like delegated proof of stake consensus, for instance. So a lot of people started fighting when we didn't have the delegation mechanism. But when we shifted from the Binance fork to the ETH fork, that was one of the most bullish factors for PulseChain because the Binance fork is a lot more centralized. So the largest stake in the network is the main validator running the whole entire network, where the fork of ETH 2.0 is a bunch of individuals that are running their own PCs, their own validators that are selected at random. It doesn't go by the amount of stake that they have. It's not the largest stake runs the network. It's a random selection of any amount of validators that can enter the network, which is a truly decentralized consensus. So it's kind of like putting a thing out in the water for people to dip their toes into for an unknown outcome until we hear from Richard.
Thank you very much.
Danny, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, Top Gun.
Sorry, sorry, when you took the pause, I thought you were done. I just wanted to say thank you very much for the clarification. Really appreciate that. And I'm going to step down and let other people come up and talk because it looks like a very popular space. Thank you for having me up.
Hey, Danny, you have your hand up?
Hey, Katie, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to represent I'm up here representing the peanut brains and noobs like myself. I've been hearing, as we all have, a lot of talk of ratio trading and profit taking, and it's cracking me up because PulseChain hadn't even launched yet. And a lot of talk about strategy. I like what Hodrill said, hold is probably best for noobs like me. I was real fortunate when I got into Hex and bought over the months in 2020 because I wasn't on Twitter or any social media. And it really helped me to focus. And I know it's impossible. If you're on Twitter and Hex me right now, it's impossible to get off and not see what's going on. I get it. But my prayer for people who don't have any Pulse or PulseX is to get off social media and do your thing if you want it. Just buy it over the months because the psyops are going to be everywhere on this app. And it can make it very difficult to stick with the DCA plan if that's what you're wanting to do. So I just want to share my experience with that. DCAing and not being on Twitter absolutely saved me with Hex because I was able to really focus and just buy, and not even think about a plan of selling. Just stake it out and see what happens. So that's what I wanted to share.
Let alone the scammers. Let alone the scammers.
Yes. Good point.
I want to take a moment of silence for the internet that we are about to break today.
Danny, you are completely right though. And I wish a lot of people wouldn't ratio trade because a lot of people don't know what they're doing. And I wish a lot of people weren't as emotional as they were in crypto, but they are. Like, emotions get you wrecked, and we say that constantly, but people do it anyway.
Yeah, and it's because they're on social media. If you're not on it, there will be no emotions at all. It's hard when you're scrolling through feeds and seeing the psyops. It's just, that's what gets people emotional.
I do agree with the psyops, but I mean, FOMO does it too to some people. I mean, you see it constantly with something goes green, they dump something for the other thing, and then they miss out on the other thing pumping, and the other one goes red. So, like, it is definitely psyops on Twitter, and there's people that pump certain things because they want you to buy it so that they can exit out of you. I 100% agree with psyops, but it is an emotional thing as it is, and a lot of people shouldn't ratio trade, but they're going to. So I would rather people ratio trade knowing what they're doing. Whether that's just me constantly screaming for the last 3 months, check the liquidity. But it's the least that I can try to do to stop people getting wrecked because I truly don't want to see anybody get wrecked. And I mean, you see it on testnet, they do. I want to see everybody succeed. I want to see everybody make great profit this cycle. I want PulseChain to be everybody's life-changing story. And I don't want to see those people get wrecked because it's gut-wrenching. And I don't want that to happen to anybody in our community. But unfortunately, it probably will happen.
Well, keep in mind too, there's a lot of people that know what they're doing that are not going to ratio trade. So don't think just because you're new, that you shouldn't ratio trade, and that, there's a lot of people that know what they're doing, guys, that are not ratio trading. So don't feel bad if you're not participating in that. Okay, we got Hex Your Life up. Did you get a chance to come up, bud? I think he might have already. All right, we got Croat.
Hey guys, what's up? Can you hear me? All right, cool. So really looking forward to the opportunity at creating some sort of getting involved in like dApp creation that will encourage new users to enter the ecosystem. What types of things can we do to become more knowledgeable on what will attract more people? Like what type of interaction or dApps, whether it be like involvement with video games or something that brings in new users. I don't even know what all the possibilities are. But if I want to become more knowledgeable in that type of thing, what would you guys recommend?
NFTs, bro. There's a lot of creative things you can do with NFTs these days.
I would actually suggest if you want to start looking at stuff to do with development, but you're not a developer yourself, so before you actually reach out to devs and do it, there's some like YouTube channels. Off the top of my head, I cannot think about a name for one, but there is YouTube content creators that work for things like Certic and other auditing companies that will teach you through some things to do with blockchain technology, to do with contracts, to do with hard hats, to do with several different things to do within development. Just don't go guns blazing into development until you start doing a little bit more research, because there's a hell of a lot more to it than people realize. So for instance, as a development team, when you're looking at PulseX on PulseChain testnet right now, you see how hard the devs actually have to work to be able to implement all the features that they're implementing. They're constantly pushing updated code in the background. It's a fork of PancakeSwap, and through that fork, the subgraph out of PancakeSwap had some issues in it. So when you look at the past history of the chart data, so to speak, the charts have gaps missing in them. That's because the subgraph had some issues. So PancakeSwap has some bugs, and forking that, they now have to go through and fix the issues that are in there. And you watch the PulseChain devs go through all of it, and they fix everything like little ninja machines. Like how fast they're actually moving with the development of PulseChain is insane, to be honest, considering they only pivoted like 6 months ago, wasn't it? Or yeah, a year now, sorry. But anyway, it's, there's a lot to it. So, a DEX isn't just a DEX. It has underlying fundamental foundations below it as well. And just simple things, for instance, like somebody asked me just the other day about admin keys again. Why has PulseX got admin keys? So if you're looking at development and you still don't know that there's different types of admin keys in crypto, chances are you should probably be looking at those things before you go launching anything. So like with admin keys, for instance, PulseX does have admin keys, but it's not the bad admin keys. So Richard Hart preachers don't have admin keys. But there's 2 types, right? So there's one type of admin key that allows you to make state changes to a contract logic. So the logic that actually defines the functionality, the internal workings of it, so to speak. So say, for instance, Hex had an admin key that allowed them to change the staking mechanism. That's a really bad admin key. Okay, that's a state change within the contract logic. That's the type of admin key that you don't want in crypto that Richard says bad, because they are. It's the worst thing that you can have in crypto is that type of admin key, in my opinion, because you have sole trust in the founder and not to do the wrong thing. Okay, same thing as somebody putting a proxy contract in front of the original contract, so upgradable contract. Well, some people hack those, black hat hackers, and gain access to the address that owns that proxy contract and exploits it. So they're bad admin keys. An okay admin key is one that allows you to make additional parameters set around it. So for instance, if you're looking at, off the top of my head, Aave. So an admin key on Aave would be allowed to whitelist tokens on their platform for, an additional token to be utilized on that platform. That's an admin key, but it's a parameter. So a parameter admin key just works around the state and around the protocol and around the contracts, just to allow additional features or additions on top of it. So PulseX has parameter admin keys, but it doesn't have state contracts. So if you're looking at development, there's a hell of a lot of research to start doing. And I would start digging deep into those types of things before hitting up devs.
Good point. CZ in the house. What's up, girl? We missed you.
Hey, good morning, Katie, Hopprel, and Power City. Love you guys. I just woke up and grabbing my coffee. Katie scared me. It's the reason why I popped in because, I'm FOMOing right now so hard. And I thought I missed out. I thought PulseChain launched. I grabbed the phone because, all of us in here, I'm pretty sure, are all freaking crazy. We can't get away. I think Danny said it. We can't get off of Twitter. Or we're constantly looking right now. And I literally, that's the first thing I did. Look, I saw Katie having a space and we had a discussion that she was going to do her space tomorrow. And we were going to hang out. Hopefully that's today. And I freaked out. So I just wanted to say that. My strategy is I'm holding. And also I just wanted to say when I go out there and I show my excitement about PulseChain, I know that when PulseChain launches, it's just like a standstill. The whole point of why I'm FOMOing right now is because we're part of history and we're so lucky to be here in the beginning. And that's my fear, missing out, because it's just part of history. So anyway, that's all I had to say. I don't want to take over the space or anything, but good morning, guys. I haven't had my coffee. Love you, Katie. Power City.
You got good energy for not having coffee yet. Wow.
Oh, I always wake up with energy. You know that. Come on. You've been with me in the mornings.
Yeah. More in the evening, though.
True that.
All right. We got Croat. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing very well, man. Thank you guys all. It's a pretty special moment. It's kind of special moment for all of us to be here. So I want to thank you guys all for helping us get through that crazy phase of outrage marketing that I don't know how I survived that personally, but we're here. So happy to be here. My question is regarding LP liquidity farming. I noticed on V4, I'm particularly interested in farming the LP, the Pulse and PulseX pair. And yes, you are receiving the incentive token, but are we also receiving the trading rewards from that pair as well? I wasn't able to see that those transactions come through on V4. So is that still part of the plan?
So when you provide liquidity, your fees are just added to your share of the pool, right? So when someone's trading through a pair and you need V2, basically either one side or the other is collected as a fee when they're doing the trade through that liquidity pool. And that just accumulates into the pool. So when you add to liquidity, you're actually getting a number of tokens that represent your share, right? Your percentage of the whole. And when you go to redeem those tokens, that's where you can take that value out. And part of that value will be the fees, the trading fees that were actually accumulated in that pool that you your share earned, right? So unlike Uniswap V3, there is no way to just claim fees. There is no button, just claim fees or rewards or something like that in liquidity providing. You actually have to remove liquidity to be able to access those trading fees. So that's just a kind of a nuance of Uniswap V2. As far as the incentive token farming, that would be like a separate thing you would claim after you've staked your LP token, and you're now earning those rewards, right? And what you do with that is up to you. If you want to, some people might compound, so they'll take that incentive token, swap it into the 2 tokens that they're providing liquidity for, add more liquidity, so they're earning more incentive, giving them a larger share of the pool to get more of those trading fees. Some people might turn around and just sell it. Some people might want to accumulate it and then provide liquidity for the incentive token. There's a lot of different ways to approach it.
Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it. You guys can take me down now. Thank you all.
Have a great day, man.
Likewise.
And just something to kind of throw out there, liquidity providing, there's a lot of talk about, hey, you can earn incentive rewards. And I know Richard's talked a lot about one of the cornerstones of PulseChain's launch and hopefully success will be people being incentivized to pair native Pulse tokens with bridged Ethereum tokens to kind of drive a certain amount of potential parity and pricing and value across the chains. Just keep in mind, if you have never provided liquidity before, do not, this is my personal recommendation, it's not financial advice, but just do not run into something like that blindly, okay? Educate yourself about providing liquidity. What is impermanent loss? How do these things work? Because it is a little bit more complicated than just staking tokens, right? Staking HEX is actually pretty darn straightforward. A stake is allocated, you're done. Providing liquidity, it's a lot of moving parts, right? Now it's easy to provide liquidity, put it in there and walk away and not think about it for a couple of weeks and then come back later. But when you come back later, you might see something that you really didn't expect if all you thought you were doing is staking, okay? So use testnet, like I mentioned before, use testnet to experiment, to practice, to see what these things will do, because it's important that you know what you're getting into before you put at risk, right? So it can be very productive, right? But you also want to know what you're doing. And try to get fees in a very active pair, et cetera. There are a lot of different strategies, but you don't want to go blindly into it, just throwing your tokens everywhere. Opportunity to go practice and see what happens, because people are trading all kinds of crazy stuff on testnet right now.
You bring up a lot of great points, LV. And there is another narrative that goes around that the incentive token can be used to counter the impermanent loss. But until we see the value for the incentive token, don't always think that those narratives are true or going to be relevant necessarily at the beginning, because tokens usually find value through community. So the incentive token could be extremely valuable. There's certain protocols that some people in the community can build to give it more value props. But until you actually see what's happening with the incentive token, don't think that it's necessarily going to outweigh all of your impermanent loss. And like LV said, I would go test it and try it out, especially if you're not, a shark that's sitting there with a fair amount of capital. Because if you are a shark, liquidity pool providing is a great way to make profit. But if you are a smaller fish and you're just looking to find a way to make an APY, sometimes when you do go to remove your liquidity, you definitely don't have what you thought you would have. So, Alex, I seen you join the chat. Do you have anything that you want to share, or your thoughts about PulseChain or some strategies going into launch?
I mean, my strategy is not particularly fancy. I think the best strategy is probably do nothing. I think there are too many unknowns, and there are too many people rushing to conclusions that may not be true. And when you're trying to game something, when you're trying to extract whatever max value out of something, do the right thing. The games, you don't want to be in a situation where the game's stacked against you. And in this situation where we don't necessarily know the exact fork block, we don't necessarily know when the bridge is going to become live. We don't know what the incentive token is going to do. There's a lot of things we don't know. And then there may be people who do know, but we do not. And in those situations, I can't help but feel the game is stacked kind of against the people who don't know. So they're better off probably doing nothing, not financial advice.
Great point, so Alex, and I would have to agree. Am I allowed to put you on the spot and ask you to talk about your data center at all and possibly give us an update? Because I personally am excited for it. I think it's great infrastructure that I don't think necessarily everybody understands how important it is for PulseChain, what you're actually doing.
Yeah, it's actually, it looks a lot nicer now than it did last time I did a video on it. The problem is I don't have any electricity over there right now. Electricians are still doing whatever they're doing, and that unfortunately is taking forever. But that's kind of the last thing, really. All of the racks with the equipment are built and wired. They're ready to move. So as soon as the electrical work is done, which I believe is like 80-90% of the way there, it's set equipment, get everything set up, and start hitting that hard. But I think it's going to be incredibly valuable, especially as we have people who want to come build things on PulseChain, just trying to give as many resources as possible. There's a lot of people that are using. I have some the smaller subset of the data center running now that it's kind of private. That I have some people with projects that need stuff. I give them some testnet resources. So, and those have been doing well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great, and I think it'll be an awesome resource for the community.
I think it's a little bit more than an awesome resource, to be honest, Alex. I think you're quite a humble man. So for people that don't know what Alex is really doing, when you're like developing a protocol, not just like a ERC20 token or a PRC20 token, when you're building a protocol that utilizes infrastructure underlying it, whether it's an archive node or RPC endpoints, etc., that infrastructure, people don't necessarily always want to look after themselves. Deploying and maintaining an archive node isn't necessarily something a development team want to do, so they outsource those things, and that is what Alex is doing. So Alex is building the infrastructure for people to build off of. So he's the core infrastructure of the chain, so to speak, for developers. So I take my hat off to Alex, and I personally am looking forward for it to be finished, and it sounds like it's going really well, which is awesome, Alex. I know that there's a lot of people in the community that will be supporting you and taking people to go support you as well, because that's what we do, support our community, and people like Alex are building some of the best protocols, or infrastructure, I should say, that helps make PulseChain be successful.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And for anyone in here who is a developer, feel free to DM me if you want details. But the core value add is that the archive nodes, like as it is right now on Ethereum, you're going to go to someone like Infura, and you're going to pay them a monthly fee to have access to archive nodes that kind of suck. Like Infura is not the greatest. And almost all of the RPC providers suck. There's only a handful that are actively trying to make sure that their archive nodes actually have all the stuff from the beginning of time. So you're going to pay those guys. It's actually quite expensive. And then if you want to do like subgraph indexing, well, you're going to do that separately through another provider. And you're going to be paying bandwidth costs to both of those providers because they have to talk to each other. And then your app's probably going to run in like AWS or something. And it's going to have to talk to all three of those. And now you have all these like bandwidth costs across the cloud and all these people you're paying to do one thing. In this situation, it's a bit more centralized, but it doesn't really matter because all these things to make these apps work in your web browser are all centralized anyways. And they're all going to essentially live right next to each other. So you can spin up your archive node, which can talk directly to your subgraph indexer because they're right next to each other. And your subgraph can sync in less than a day instead of 2 weeks like it takes everywhere else. And your app can live right there next to all that as well. And then hopefully in the future, scale that out into more locations and have some fancier stuff. But work in progress, but it's going to make developing things very fast and very easy and very cost effective.
Yeah, a lot of people, they get tied up in, I'm getting free tokens, and there's an airdrop, and there's PulseX, and there's liquidity, and there's a bridge, and they don't realize, right, while forking a chain was an accomplishment, it is an accomplishment, and I'm not trying to devalue that at all. All the luxuries that we have on Ethereum, because it's many, there's a lot of history there of all the infrastructure around it, right, is not going to be there on day one on PulseChain. All these services that a lot of different dApps use, indexing services and APIs and other things that make their lives easier, all have to be recreated, redeployed, launched specifically for PulseChain. So, everything that Alex, you're describing, like these are all things that builders are running into. It's like, oh, okay, I don't have that. All right, I can't just go to Infura and get my node services. I can't just go to Morales and get an API, right? I mean, someday they'll be supporting PulseChain, but not yet, right? So we have to go now and find homegrown solutions and fork something or build something and fill in all these gaps if you want to be there on day one without all this infrastructure, right? So it is a real challenge, and it's a real service to start filling in those gaps.
Yeah, and I think there's tremendous opportunity here. Like, obviously I'm doing a lot, but I think there's even more things more services people could provide that maybe I won't get to as quickly as some other people want. Just do it. Like, I think everyone in this community would rather support other people in the community doing these things than waiting around for Morales to eventually support it, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say, Alex, when you brought up the aspect of it being a little bit more centralized. Well, I'm biased. I'm extremely biased. I think the community should support the community, and somebody like Alex is a very trusted, well-known community member in here who's building infrastructure that is vital to PulseChain. Development teams like our city would happily use Alex any day. Kind of waiting for Alex's services, to be honest, because it just simplifies development. Again, though, why would we go to Infura even if they supported PulseChain when we can go to Alex, a trusted, well-known community member? You know, the community supports the community, and I think that's also what makes PulseChain so special. The fact that there isn't a grant program in PulseChain, so when blockchains deploy, there's usually a grant program where the founder pays a bunch of people to come integrate and support the chain, pays them for marketing. So people aren't necessarily, or big name protocols aren't necessarily building on these chains because they want to be there. It's just a payday for them. They get paid to move over through a grant system. Where PulseChain, although it's a little bit harder from a development perspective, to be honest, to have to do everything from the ground up, it makes PulseChain 10 times stronger than all of these other protocols because we go out and we build partnerships. So everybody that's building on PulseChain wants to be there. And then people like Alex come along that build the core infrastructure for developers that is extremely needed and an amazing resource and tool and the best opportunities. You know, Alex has a great opportunity in front of him right now, but the community supporting the community, and it's a community-based ecosystem. So it's in a way centralized because of the infrastructure. It just is no matter where you go, but it's decentralized because it's decentralized within our community. It's not big core services that we're using like Moralis or Infura, even though Moralis coming over and supporting PulseChain will be great, especially for, you know, having the name Moralis there because it's a well-known name in the space, you know, marketing and getting the word out. But personally, I like supporting the community. Somebody like Alex, you know, he has my full support. I love what he's doing.
Absolutely. And guys, if you haven't shared the space, please, we're trying to bring as many people in here and educate them before launch, answer any questions. Let's see. Hex, your life up. Did you get a chance to speak yet, bud?
No, my question got answered. How do I remove myself from speaking?
I got you. All
right, good looks.
So I just want to remind everyone how like amazing this 2 years has actually been, right? It's really hard to wait. 2 years ago, we thought PulseChain would take like 2-3 months at most. You know, that was the feeling way back at the beginning by the PulseChain sacrifice. But if you look back, that wouldn't have been the greatest of experiences because we'd have a chain with like nothing on it, nothing for anybody to do. This infrastructure, such as what Alex is working on, none of that would have been in place. We wouldn't have very good price feeds for things. And the only thing on the chain would have been like one token. And we'd be trading in and out of hex, taking as much hex as we can from each other. Many people would get wrecked. Other people would, you know, do good. And, you know, the users coming over would see that it's kind of like a ghost chain, right? But 2 years has given the ability for people to build out projects, to build, you know, stable coins and to build out various node structures, to build lending platforms, to NFT platforms, all sorts of different things, okay? And when this chain goes live, hopefully in the next, you know, day or two, shortly after all these things are going to start popping up on the chain, it will be the fastest flourishing chain that's ever existed. It really will. Every other chain that's ever existed, it took a long time. The development is not easy. It's very time consuming. Every other chain kind of had some very slow growth. And we're going to be off into the races really early on, ready for people to pile in and start using the things that they're already using on those other chains. So just keep that in mind. It's been a long wait, but it's been for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, you have your hand up, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to put your hand up when you're the host. But yeah, go ahead.
Wait, it's a force of habit, okay? But Jesse, sorry. Jesse partly touched on something that is a really great topic too, though, is oracles. So oracles have a really bad reputation in crypto, and it's a fair reputation, to be honest. The infrastructure took a while for it to start to develop, but oracles are getting to a point now where they aren't as bad as what they used to be. So for instance, the Teller fork that's coming to PulseChain, one of the aspects that it has that other oracle services don't have is time-weighted averages. So with time-weighted averages, it takes like a 20-minute interval and the average price between that time period. So when you look at charts, like everybody sees the big scam weeks through them, that's when people were getting liquidated or protocols would fail because they would have an oracle that just read the most recent data, like price data, sorry, which, you know, if somebody had a vault, for instance, and it was under collateralized, the scam week went down, well, they got liquidated. So time-weighted averages protects people, and that comes down to oracle infrastructure. And then you look at our community again. So you see Gamma, for instance, he's in full support of the Teller Oracle service because he knows it's a key infrastructure for PulseChain. So people might not like oracles, but some of the tools and protocols that are being built on the chain that will bring users over utilize oracles. So you're watching our community now talking about, okay, so who's going to be deploying nodes into the network? It's not necessarily, teams and development teams deploying these nodes in the Oracle network to profit from it. They're deploying nodes in the network to make sure that it is decentralized, to make sure that we're supporting the infrastructure on the chain. And you just don't see that on any other blockchain. You don't have that mass community support behind them. So by more people joining the network, there's more data being put up. So there's more nodes in the network to make sure that the data isn't manipulated, to make sure that there's proper price feed data being put up. But again, you just don't see that in other communities where people go rushing to do these things. You see Oracle services and people looking at it if they're going to make an APY, and then they'll deploy nodes in the network. They go there for money, where a lot of the PulseChain community are doing it because it's key infrastructure that we need and we want to see it succeed.
It's a great point, Katie. Alex, I know you want to speak on that, so go ahead and then we'll bring up Jen's.
Yeah, so is the Teller thing, I've heard about a little bit, is that them officially doing it, or is that us kind of doing it ourselves?
It's us. So Teller forked, Teller made the fork of themselves. So it's a Teller fork on PulseChain that they built. It's called Fetch though. So, but it is, community based now. It's not fully backed by Teller, so to speak, but it's built by Teller.
Okay. I'm going to, when things get to that point, I'll provide some resources to that, because I don't like oracles. I think if you can avoid ever using one, great. But I do understand there are people who want to do things that need it. And my whole thought on the whole oracle problem has always been, instead of, I could come out tomorrow and say, oh, by the way, here's my new fancy oracle. But then I'm responsible for it, right? It's like if it dies or causes people to lose a bunch of money because it's centralized and it solely relies on me, then it's like I've done the bad thing. I like the idea of it being community, supported, where it's like, hey, we put our best efforts into this. We don't recommend you use it, but if you need it, here it is. And, we do our best to keep it up to date. I think that's like the best way to treat oracles, because while it doesn't really matter how good an oracle is, I think Teller's are probably one of the best that exist. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good it is. At the end of the day, it's not DeFi. It can't self-rely on itself. It does need people to do things. But the more people we have doing things, the better it's going to be.
Agreed.
I would like to talk just a little bit about the importance of oracles, specifically to DeFi. So if you have a DeFi lending platform, whether it's an Aave fork or a Liquidity fork or something else, usually you want that thing to be immutable. So you have a couple options to get your price for the tokens that are going to be collateral, right? You can point straight to a pool on PulseX and say, always take the price there and just hard code that in, pointing straight to that token pairing, right? Whether that's PulseX paired back to TDI or DI or whatever, right? And you can even have it do a time-weighted average. And then you can launch your protocol and it can be completely immutable and everything runs great. And you've got a great narrative that, hey, we're immutable, trustless, nothing can ever change. But you just introduced the biggest risk imaginable. Because when an update is done and everyone migrates from a PulseX version 1 to PulseX version 2 and liquidity gets pulled, or people decide they just don't like Pulse paired to DAI anymore, they want Pulse paired to USDC or whatever, you have an immutable protocol that's looking at a price of something that no longer is has a price. Right, that doesn't exist anymore in that pairing, or that pairing has super thin liquidity, and you just wrecked and literally wrecked everybody inside of your DeFi protocol because you can't make any changes. So what these oracles do, right? So there's kind of two types of oracles. You've got centralized ones where it's just an entity, a company or whoever, that says this is the price of the thing, and they feed that price back into their protocol. That's risky, right? Because now the risk was transferred to that entity. The other way is completely decentralized, consensus-based mechanisms where anybody can participate and they can grab APIs from all over the place, wherever people can find a price for something, whether it's Pulse or PulseX or whatever. And then the entire community feeds those prices in. And all of those nodes, all those people providing that service to the community, their nodes are reaching a consensus across each other. It's not that much different than the blockchain itself, where people are running transactions and there's a consensus thing that has to happen across everything. Well, now you've just recreated that into a pricing feeds consensus mechanism. And now if there is a bad actor who says, well, from my node, I'm going to try to feed a bad price in, All the other nodes see that, and they kick him out and they slash him or whatever else. It's the same mechanisms that the blockchain itself has. So now the same risks that the blockchain has, but the same things that make blockchain very sustainable and good, you just recreated that and put that into a price feed mechanism. I'd venture to say something like Teller and how that whole system operates and slashes and incentivizes and the consensus-based aspect of it and aggregation of all these prices, kicks out the bad prices and slashes those people. I'd venture to say that is the most sustainable way to feed a price into a DeFi protocol and make sure that it can thrive forever.
And I think, like Alex said too, to add on top of that, Jesse, is community and making sure that the community are the people that are supporting that oracle. I really don't know who had their hand up first, by the way.
It was Jens. Jens is next.
Hey, everybody. Katie, thank you for having this space for us all. I just had a question about a off-ramp and an on-ramp. And also, maybe nobody's expecting, but how would the wallet launch? How would today? You know? So just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? Is there an on-ramp or an off-ramp being created now and or maybe in the future? Obviously in the future, but maybe today, you know? Have a good one over there. Thank you.
So Coast are building a fiat on an off-ramp. Don't ask me what their fees are because I honestly haven't gone back and looked. I think they may have released it, but personally I don't know off the top of my head. Fiat on an off-ramp, there's also several centralized exchange listings that are very prominent and likely to happen very quickly. I know my team and I have talked to a centralized exchange that are already looking at listing Pulse. They really liked the whole entire ecosystem. I forget what your other question was other than fiat on offer. Oh, the wallet. Yeah, there's a lot of people speculating that it's going to launch with the wallet. I mean, Richard said once before that there was a dev just working solely on the wallet. So chances are that the wallet will either be launching with PulseChain or shortly after.
Cool. And Pulseformer, go ahead, bud.
What's up, everybody? Got a few things. Alex, thank you. Love icosahedron. Good job, everybody, for waiting for so long. I haven't gotten a let's go yet, so let's go. Super excited. But my main thing is, what do y'all think that PulseX SAC wallet with all that DAI is going to do? I've been really running a lot of theories through my heads about it, asking around. But I think it's going to play a pretty big part in the whole bridging aspect of it. But I just want to get everybody's thoughts on it.
Well, I don't know what it's going to do, but one thing I'm kind of bullish on that would be cool if it did, I think, is if it's going to get a bunch of its forked DAI on the other side. And when that happens, that DAI is technically still usable. So it could choose to send some of it back to ETH and some of the ETH version to Pulse using the bridge, pair them together, and we have kind of our first pseudo stable at that point, which would be cool. Don't know if that will happen, but it would be cool.
Nice. Who we got? ATX, you had your hand up, buddy. Go ahead.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is a fantastic day. Thanks for hosting the space. Thanks for having me on. I actually got a couple questions if I could run through them, and hopefully y'all can help and maybe just open some ideas for other people as well. So the first one, someone asked this question a little while ago, and it had to do with liquidity providing and yield farming. And the question that I had, and I think they were asking, I don't know if it really got answered, is when you provide liquidity and you take the LP tokens and provide and move that into a yield farm, during that time you're earning whatever the token is, incentive token will say. So let's say you pull the yield farm at that time, then you pull the liquidity at that point in time. During that time while you're yield farming, do you also earn the fees that are traded as a liquidity provider, or is that null and void at that point in time when you go provide liquidity and yield farm?
LV, are you still here? Because you explain that one better than I ever can.
And you caught me multitasking. I can't.
I'll say the question again if that's cool, or you can't answer.
No. If you don't mind repeating it, real quick.
Cool.
Sorry.
So when you provide liquidity, you get the LP token. You take the LP token, you go yield farm with that token. Once you're yield farming, you're earning incentive. Once you pull the yield farm out, and you have just the LP tokens, and then you pull your LP tokens out. During that time you're yield farming, are you also earning fees traded between the liquidity providing, or is it just yield farming?
Gotcha. And thank you for repeating that. Sorry about that. Yes. So as long as you have liquidity pool tokens, right, and that liquidity is in the pool, it is earning trading rewards, right, trading fees for every swap that goes through that pool. Once you remove liquidity, right, that's when you are now, exiting the pool. You don't have to remove all the liquidity at once. You can remove partial liquidity. You can add the liquidity, so you have flexibility there. So while you're staked and you're earning the incentive, you're also accumulating within that pool the trading fees that are being collected from folks going back and forth through either side, right? So it just kind of adds to your value over time, right? And in PulseX, there is no option to just claim the fees. You can't just claim fees. You have to remove LP tokens to be able to get what would equate to the additional value out, right? So the good thing is that you're not losing that by staking for incentive token. So the LP is still yield bearing in a sense, right? You can think of it that way, while it's also earning and farming something else.
Awesome. Appreciate you answering that and clarifying. That is pretty awesome, incredible. I don't know if I've really ever heard anyone talk about that. I've just kind of been curious. So that question earlier popped that in. Awesome question, or awesome answer. I got 2 more questions if y'all don't mind, or 3 if really. So Alex, real fast, you mentioned DAI, and everyone had the question a second ago, the PulseX address holding the #1 position in DAI, that kind of stuff, and what they plan on doing. Can y'all just explain to me why DAI won't die on PulseChain? Because it's paired with USDC and it's paired with Ethereum, and those are both going to be pretty valueless when the time comes, and especially the pairing of the Ethereum with the DAO Maker protocol. Can you explain how DAI could still function on PulseChain?
Well, the pairings won't matter, like through Uniswap and all that kind of stuff, because USDC will go to effectively nothing, and the Ethereum pool will be drained pretty easily because of the supply change. So really what it comes down to is a locked collateral, because the protocol itself will still function. So it'll be different than like USDC or Tether, because those things will just not function once they're over there. Like unless Circle comes out on Pulse and says, oh, by the way, we're going to support this, which they're not going to do. They don't have the reserves to do that. So the big kicker is that the protocol itself still functions. This address has the most amount of DAI. Like there's no one who could dump harder than this address. So if it just paired them 50-50 in liquidity pool in a large enough amount, it doesn't really matter how much DAI any of us have. No one could actually significantly alter the price just because of the amount of tokens. At which point it's just a matter of, can enough Pulse, which would now be Ethereum, right? Because of the name change, but it's the same thing. Can enough of that be shoved into DAI to resurrect it on the other side? My guess is it probably could, but so like it's a bunch of what ifs. But in theory, you could make that liquidity so thick between the two that they're almost 1-to-1, and give the opportunity for people to shoot a bunch of Pulse into it, and they would get immediate like value from that. So it's a possibility. It might not happen. It might happen. It's just something I've thought would be interesting to see if it played out that way.
For sure. I appreciate that clarification. I was curious though, because like, is the DAI protocol, is the DAI token not coded to be with Ethereum? And like, is that not hardlined in the code, or can it truly be switched out for any other token if someone else was to provide enough liquidity inside it? Like, for example, instead of Ethereum, let's just say Cardano. Could you push enough Cardano into it to replace Ethereum on the Ethereum network? Is that what I'm understanding?
So on PulseChain, Ethereum just becomes Pulse. It's not,
Correct.
Pulse isn't actually a new token. It just, all Ethereum becomes Pulse. And what DAI uses is called wrapped Ethereum, which is just a smart contract that wraps the native token and spits out an ERC called WETH. WETH will still exist and it will still function on PulseChain. And that's why if you notice, like on my Uniswap interface fork, I leave support for WETH in there because Uniswap entirely depends on WETH. And people will still have WETH and they'll want to be able to get their Pulse out of it. So I've kind of left that in there. So it still kind of allows people to remove their liquidity or whatever once the fork happens. But the big kicker is that it will function just fine because nothing's really changing. We're just changing what we're calling the native token, not necessarily making a new native token, if that makes sense. Like the name change doesn't actually apply to any of the protocols at all. Like from their perspective, Pulse is the same thing as Ethereum.
I think some challenges that this theory provides is like the pricing of that ETH, of that native Yes coin. All the liquidity is going to be moved elsewhere, and where it used to look for the price of ETH, to feed into the Maker protocol, is no longer there, or it's super thin. And then another thing to consider is who are all the shareholders of the Maker token? Who are the voters? They can make changes to the protocol, can shut it down, can add and remove various tokens that are allowed to be used as collateral. That's not necessarily Richard, right? Circle themselves have like a huge controlling stake of the Maker voting. So, it's a super risky play, in my opinion, to
be the OA, so to speak, and say, oh, I'm just going to try this, just to have somebody else come in over top of you and squash it, or the pricing mechanics are just really screwed up, and everyone gets liquidated anyway and stuff. So it's a good thought experiment. We'll have to watch it play out, though.
I appreciate the answers on that. 2 more questions, and then I'll step down as speaker. I appreciate you having me up here and clarifying some things. So when we bridge tokens over from Ethereum into PulseChain, for example, USDC, and say at that point in time we want to take profits to switch out of PulseChain or PulseX or even Hex on PulseChain, will you have to switch those tokens over into the bridged asset of USDC, or will there be a point in time where those tokens are because I imagine you don't want to hold them as bridged assets for too long, because you typically, if you bridge something over, you want to transfer it into the actual native protocol or the actual system state, not system state, y'all get what I'm saying, the overall network. But the question, I guess, would be if we have bridged in USDC and we wanted to take profits, how would one go about doing so? Would we have to convert those profits into the bridged in asset?
So you're kind of talking about 2 separate things. So when you're talking about the bridging platform is a cross-chain bridge. So when you bridge in an asset through that bridge, it wraps your asset and it holds the original asset in the custody of the bridging platform. So say, for instance, it was USDC. Well, the bridging platform holds your real USDC and it mints you a representation on PulseChain. And that representation is always pegged at a 1-to-1 to the underlying asset. So the reason why people say move out of bridged over tokens, or wrap tokens, I should say, is because those liquidity pool contracts are known to be exploited. So PulseRamp is a fork of OmniBridge, which is a pretty great bridge, to be honest. I would like to see what else they did with the bridging platform, but that's why people say move out of the wrap assets. So bridging platforms are speculative on their own because of the massive exploits that you see in blockchain. And PulseChain being so decentralized, you can't just roll back PulseChain. So sort of like what you've seen in Binance when its bridge had a huge exploit, they were able to stop that from happening by rolling back. You can't do that. So bridging in an asset, it's always pegged to the underlying asset, but that underlying asset's now in the custody of the bridging platform. When you're looking to take profits, whatever token that you're holding or whatever asset you're holding will completely depend on whatever time frame it is that you're looking to take profits, because maybe there's a centralized exchange listing and you just send that token to the centralized exchange. Maybe you have to move out of Pulse into DAI and then take that wrap DAI and take it back through the bridge onto Ethereum and then cash out through Ethereum. It really depends what point in time you're looking to take profits. So that's a speculative question to really answer, because there's multiple different scenarios that can play out yet on how to take profits.
For sure. And that's why I bring it up. It is all this is speculation, no matter what we talk about. PulseChain hasn't launched and we have no idea how it's all going to play out. And that's why we come up with these questions and thoughts, just to help, share all the information. But I appreciate the clarification on that, because that's kind of the idea. You don't want to typically hold assets that are bridged in. And so that kind of leads to my next question, which is the last question as well. And then I'll step down. Appreciate you having me on, which is when bridging in assets and pairing together the tokens, such as DAI to DAI or whatever other token that you have, when you have the bridged in asset and you're pairing them together, wouldn't you have to keep it as the bridged asset as well? So for example, Hex, we bridge it in, you have wrapped Hex and then Hex over on that side. Wouldn't you have to keep those pairs together, and wouldn't it have to maintain on the bridge token? And isn't that a bad, like we just discussed? I know OmniBridge is great, PulseRamp is great, OmniBridge hasn't ever had any issues. I know the idea behind all that as well. So appreciate them doing the work to find the best bridge that hasn't had any exploits at this time, but it still is a vulnerability point at that point in time as well, is it not? And I guess, how wouldn't we have to do those together?
Yeah, so bridging platforms are speculative. So realistically, if you're in crypto, right, if you are only just holding a token, you're the safest. If you've revoked all permissions to that wallet and disconnected from all sites, that's when you're safe, because you're not touching anything. But the second you go out and do something, whether it's connecting to a DEX and trading or signing a permission to do anything, not necessarily just holding a wrap token from a bridging platform, you're already at risk, right? So there's risk in everything that you do in crypto and DeFi, and holding wrapped assets is definitely one of them. It is speculative until a bridge has proven itself, of course. But so is liquidity pool providing with impermanent loss. So if you're already being a liquidity pool provider and bridging in assets and using one of those wrapped assets to provide liquidity, well, you're doing something risky to do something else that's risky. So it's how great is your risk factor that you're willing to take? That's the questions that each person has to ask themselves. How much risk are they willing to take for how much profit they're willing to take? So like Uniswap, for instance, is a great proven protocol that hasn't had exploits, nothing wrong with it. But then you look at SushiSwap, which did great for ages, but then it had just certain exploits within certain contracts of that DApp. So everything has risk. So unless you're just buying and holding and doing nothing else, there is risk involved. So yeah.
Calculate your risk.
Yeah. Now, one quick point on PulseX. If you're looking to be like a liquidity provider, for example, you'll notice that there's like an APR. There's returns. You get extra value when you're taking the greatest amount of risk, right? So people kind of chase that because when the liquidity pools are really thin over there, they're like, oh, look at all these returns I could be getting. But you're taking on risk for the possibility of making gains, lots of gains. But it doesn't always go well for everybody either. So calculate everything you do very carefully. You could think you're going to make a whole bunch of money and you could lose it all. Be very careful.
Yes, so that comes down to like envy. Oh, sorry, Alex, you go.
I was just going to add, this comes back to what I said when I first came in here, is that there are too many unknowns and too many places for risk to really bite you with this fork and everything that's going to happen very quickly, which is why I tell people consider doing nothing. But you know, I think if the bridge does well and there's no hacks and it's great, the people who 100% trust that bridge and put all of their money into it are probably going to do very well. But if there's a bridge exploit, they're going to do very, very badly, worse than anyone else. So, you know, it's up to them whether they take that risk or not. And how much, like, the beauty of this is like, you don't have to take 100% risk. You can say, okay, well, I'm just going to test it out. So I'm just going to put like 5% of my bag through there because I'm comfortable if it dies or is exploited, whatever, I'm comfortable losing 5% or whatever that is for you. You know, figure out your own risk analysis in this case. But, you know, there are way, way, way too many unknowns to sit here and be like, oh, I'm going to do exactly this because this is going to work out. And like, nobody knows. I don't even think anyone like actually coding this stuff on PulseChain in private probably knows that answer. Nobody knows what's going to happen. It's all it's going to be a lot of a game at first and a lot of players with different motivations. So think to yourself, you know, what risks am I comfortable taking? Do your own research. Think about a lot of these things like bridge risk and permanent loss on the LP side and whether that's counteracted by yield farming the incentive token. You know, like think about all these things and come up with your own numbers on that. But it is going to be a lot of complexity and a lot of people trying to do different things. And a lot of them are going to do well and a lot of them are going to do very badly.
Exactly. It's like speculation and calculation of risk. And Alex is right. It can be complex. So just be prepared for that. Guys, let's try and go in order here. Real quick, Manny's been waiting for a while. Then we'll go Jim and then Gary.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So my question is simple. Pretty much, to my understanding, the snapshot has not happened yet. To my understanding, it happens when the fork is created or when the chain forks, right? So I guess my question is, what do you guys think is going to happen to eHex when actually the mainnet goes live? Are like hex holders expected to bridge over their assets, especially their hex assets? Is eHex is expected to take like a kind of like a pullback, or what's the? What do you think?
Well, it's possible, and this is complete speculation. Nobody knows the real answer, but it's possible the snapshot's already occurred. The fork has already occurred. I think Katie was saying earlier, Gamma said it takes a number of weeks to sync the nodes from Ethereum. There's also the fixer bot process that has to go buy up all the liquidity and then redistribute it back into PulseX. I'm sure there's some internal testing to make sure everything is just running smoothly on PulseX and even the hex front end and such behind the scenes. So, you know, I don't think that you'll just see that the fork happened and the next day PulseChain's live and we all know the URL. It is entirely possible. PulseChain is currently live right now. We just don't know how to access it because nobody told us all the settings and the URL and such. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, makes sense. So what do you think is going to happen to eHex? Like, I know that the utility is still there. It's a finished product. You know, you're going to get your rewards and all of that. But do you guys think this would affect the future of eHex or what? Wouldn't people prefer pHex over eHex? That's my question, I guess.
So that is all speculation. But Alex, I know you opened up your mic because you were going to tune in there just before that next question if you wanted to go.
Go ahead, Katie.
No, Alex was the one that opened his mic to go talk.
Sorry. I thought I was talking, but my mic was muted.
Oh.
Yeah, So my point with this is, and this is what I try to make people think about, is the snapshot could be now or have already happened, and I kind of feel like the market's pricing that in a little bit. It feels like that today to me.
I can't hear Alex for whatever reason. I don't know why.
You can step out if you can hear me and then come back up.
Yeah, you might have to leave and come back, bud.
Keep going, Alex. Sorry.
Okay, so that might have actually already happened. But also, we've had 2 testnets. At this point, most likely the fixer bot, PulseX deployment, and actually forking the chain is likely a pretty known quantity. That could all be scripted, most likely. We also know now how to reliably roll back an Ethereum network chains, like if you're running Aragon, for example, which is the one that matters most. If you're running that, we have a methodology of rolling that back like on Ethereum to a specific block in about 6 hours, roughly. So at that point, realistically, I think PulseChain could be forked and launched in less than a day. I think they know enough stuff. I think they have a lot of this stuff already figured out, which is why we've done 2 testnets. So I think 7 days is a very wide quote for what time we have to expect for this to come out. And of course, those have been broken before, so who knows? But this one seems pretty real to me. So in that situation, where we have the 7-day window, it's like, even if Snapchat already happened, if someone looked at it and was like, I don't really like what happened after I said that, so let's just re-snapshot again. It could totally happen. There's a lot of room in a 7-day window for this to change. And again, it goes back to the unknown unknowns. Do nothing is what I'm doing.
Cool. All right, we got Jim. You've had your hand up, bud.
Yeah, appreciate you guys hosting the spaces. Hope you guys are doing really well. I was just listening while I was working, as most of you are doing right now. So I had a few suggestions which I'm going to drop in Katie's comments right here. So the first thing is, as Katie mentioned that Morales is going to be a prominent brand who's going to be integrating PulseChain. That's really great. And of course, if you guys have been following Ivan, you guys already know that he has a different product which is called Morales Money, which he's going to be integrating multiple networks, and one of them is going to be PulseChain, of course, right? So in terms of development, developer experience and all that, that's also going to be taken care by Morales Web3, the SaaS platform, right? So that's great. But one thing which some of you guys touched on is and from what I've observed from the community is that the projects are more community driven. It's led by passionate founders who have been following Richard from a long time, and myself as well. I entered into crypto following Richard and Ivan. I learned coding from Ivan, and Richard was one of his first guests who I listened to back in 2017. Of course, Richard is an amazing guy. We all know that, right? So yeah, highly recommend checking out that Morales Money as an explorer, and try to provide as much as feedback to Ivan, or you can just DM me. I can forward it to the team directly. And I also heard some conversations about Oracle solutions, this and that, about Chainlink. The oracles are super important. It's going to be key for PulseChain and so many other networks out there. But I really find a lot of there's a lot of challenges with Chainlink and all the other solutions like Umbrella and all these stuff. They're not compatible with high throughput chains or networks. So, from what I've seen is Pit Network. There's something called a Pit Network, and there's another solution called Switchboard. These guys are high frequency traders. Their solutions are optimized for for Solana and beyond, very high throughput. So these guys are and they don't come directly from TradFi, just crypto native. They come from the TradFi world. Jump Trading, as you guys have known, they are a conglomerate, and they have also Jump Crypto. So they have a solution called Pit Network. Check that out. Switchboard, check that out. I think these are going to be super nice for any dApps or services building on PulseChain. And the third thing, what I wanted to discuss is there's a new form of standard of apps that are being generated in Solana, if you guys are following. And so these are called XNFTs. X basically stands for executable NFTs. Think of it as most of us, we go to a client front end, or we use a mobile app, in order to access this dApps, right? But what happens when you publish your dApp on Google Play Store or Apple iOS Store, whatever, there's a 30% in-app purchases charge, right? Why does all these developers, crypto developers, have to pay all these conglomerates like Google and Apple 30%? Instead, XNFT apps are basically, you can redeploy any of your app from any network as an XNFT inside a wallet directly, and their wallet is called Backpack, right? So this Backpack, I've been using it for a while. They just launched it a few months ago, and they've been going nuts, in the Solana and Ethereum side of communities. And the main thing is not just about that, it's just a pull request away in order to integrate PulseChain in that. And not only just that, it's really a different sort of experience which we haven't seen in crypto ever. Believe me, it's such an amazing experience for like super communities, and also it expands the whole PulseChain community in general outside the PulseChain and Hex communities, right? In order to bring in this people from Solana, people from all other networks, right? We are all fighting for the same game. Like we are all striving for to push the crypto industry forward. So we have to work together. I think this is going to be an absolute insane channel for PulseChain community to explore. So, and the other thing is, what we already know and have seen, on-chain price discovery or on-ledger price discovery is much more preferred over like sexes, right? Why? Because real-time transparency, we can see what's happening, we can track some wallets, and we have more clarity. That's really great. And we have seen this for a couple of years, since Solana has been online, man, we have seen like amazing, price discovery. Like for example, Bonk. If you guys have heard of the Bonk, like just beginning of the year, it took the whole crypto by storm, right? Why is that? Like the whole price discovery of that Bonk, that meme token, happened on ledger, on a club, central limit order book, which is basically like a central exchange. And I mean, it's all they need is more volume. More volume means more capital, and the chain can handle it. I think PulseChain also could do that. So it'd be good to see many aggregators and dexes to also come on that. I'm sure like there are many, and which will come in the ecosystem. So I just wanted to share this, and I'm just going to drop this in the comments of Katie. So if you guys want to have a look, I just posted it. So have a look. I've linked everything what you guys need. If you need more information, reach out to me via DM. I have all my links in my bio. But nevertheless, I just want to say one other thing. Morales is super bullish on PulseChain. I know this because while PulseChain sacrifice was going on, I was the first person to actually make the sacrifice. I FOMO'd in basically, like literally FOMO'd in. And of course, Ivan is a big, supporter of crypto, and we have a big community over there as well. I don't work with Morales right now, but of course, I know from the people who I used to work with, they're super amazing, and they're definitely going to support like PulseChain. If you guys keep on building, and if you see the momentum and the community enthusiasm from the community, definitely, I guess, like you will have, all their support. So it's going to be insane, So I mean, I won't discuss like strategies and all that. We'll see what happens when it goes live. But definitely, you guys are professionals in order to actually judge for yourself how to manage risk, right? So yeah, appreciate what you guys are doing.
All right, thanks, bud. Okay, let's jump to cryptocurrent. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, I'm Crypto Rick. You probably have seen my YouTube channels. I just wanted to offer a contrarian view, a kind of Johnny Chaos Jr. perspective. I think they're playing a bit of games here. It seems a bit odd that the devs would say, good luck for the launch tomorrow. I think they're trying to tell people, to try and give the appearance that they're launching, but that defeats the whole purpose of a stealth launch. The other thing is we haven't seen Bitcoin fully dump yet. And the price isn't even less than 15,000. So I think we've still got some time to go. And I know this is gonna, piss off some people, but I think there's a lot of 7D chess games going on here. We're seeing a lot of sales of Hex, and I think that Richard Hart may be selling his own wallets, like just some small bags that he has here and there, to basically cause the price to crash, and then basically get rid of the day traders. And I think he's doing that to basically poach the day traders and basically get rid of them. And he's using his developers to basically say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm happy for you to share, but please, I just don't want people going into heavy speculations and trying to make out that Richard's doing things. That's just not what it's about.
No, but I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing that he's doing, because he's actually getting rid of all the day traders.
Gary,
yeah,
you were next.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Yeah, we're not keeping this to speculation. It's just about PulseChain. Gary,
we're not gonna discuss what Richard does with his. He doesn't talk about what he does with his things, and we're not gonna host this space and allow people to speculate if he's dumping on everyone's head. That's not appropriate here. You can take that somewhere else.
Gary, you were up.
Yeah, so the indicators that we look at as humans for a long period of time, maybe it started with when does the trees blossom and when do they fruit, like a spring, summer kind of seasonality. And then some people started to plant and calve and domesticate animals and things like that, and they became more productive because they paid attention to the weather, seasonality, and others learned from those successful farmers or whatever, right? So it's interesting that we're in this field of assets and speculation over what, like even the fellow before about like what is someone else going to do, or what are they doing? When I was first put my hand up, it was about DAI, and I trust a lot of you guys, especially the panelists, that have spent tens of thousands of hours individually, I'm sure, in understanding the vocabulary, how to relate it to this technology field that, most of us, we're not in the weeds of the technology or the relationships, or what is a vulnerability as far as an oracle, or a vulnerability as far as a trust factor of an influencer, or any of those things, right? So we're all learning, I think, and it's when we were talking about DAI earlier and what will happen with the fork of DAI. ATX had brought that up, I think. Like, we can make our best guess on probabilities, and we can make our best guess about something that has admin keys and no path to redemption, such as USDC having no value, right? You can have a best guess. You can have a best guess about the security of using OmniRamp or a fork of OmniRamp as the ramp into and out of this ecosystem. You're making best guesses based on maybe best practices or standard of practices. I like all that. I think it's great. But really, in my opinion, is social consensus is what gives something value. These are all intangibles, every single one of them, and they're all narratives. And because we look at the weather and say it might rain today, many people can look at the sky and say it looks like there's rain clouds, maybe it's going to rain. But even that doesn't work out sometimes, right? Like, you can have consensus at what you're looking at. You can look at TA charts. So you can say, look, more people are looking at this TA chart because it's a popular chart. It's got a popular Google trend, and people are looking at a frog or whatever, and then speculate over what's going to happen. And, we have our experiences, we have our biases, we have our field of comfort and field of nervousness in this space. And I think that the most important thing to protect is the reputation that, especially a lot of the panelists have. You may be founders of products, you may be experts in code or, relationships that are needed for blockchain to function. We all have some level of trust in the development and selection that Richard has had on formation of these products that we're enthusiastic about. But again, we assign value. You can have, I think even earlier today, the price moved a lot in HEX, and there was a lot of commentary about should that person have doxed, should they not have doxed, that they had a big sell. And then they explained in a different room why they had a big sell and what their view of their hedging and their speculation and their diversification is. And it didn't relate to a lot of people. So I'm just saying, I love that these spaces are available. I love that we all talk about code, blockchain, truth, immutability, all the things that we are passionate about. And we do assign values to word and to brand, and we default to someone else's authority often, right? So we're really protective about the community and protective about the panelists. I appreciate the guys are saying these things. Some of them will be true. A lot of them will be true that everyone says on these panels, these Twitter spaces for the months to come as well. But some won't work out. So just be cautious about your brand and caveat emptor and all those kinds of good hedging on your frame, because these things have value a lot because of Richard, but a lot more because of the leaders that are on these kinds of panels and asking these kinds of questions and engaging new communities and explaining to the best of their ability, with always the hedge, saying these things sometimes don't work out, but consensus is what gives it value. So yeah, just a point there.
Thanks, Gary. ATX, you had one more question, right?
Yeah, you already know.
Go ahead, bud.
Appreciate y'all. Two things we could just kind of probably knock it in one up, I assume. So when bridging in tokens and stables to hold for like a DCA strategy, what do y'all think would be the best way to go about doing that? Because I know a lot of folks are wanting to DCA into PulseChain and PulseX, and I guess would the best strategy in that regard, from what we currently know, be to bridge in a stablecoin or a token of your choice, and then use that for DCAing on, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 90% dips if they should show in a rise?
Initially, that would be the only way to do it, especially after the 48-hour window goes live, for at least a solid couple of weeks, to be honest, before anything else goes live. So like even the fiat on and off ramp, you're probably looking at a couple of weeks or a month. Portal X swap that allows people to, simplify the bridging, you're still looking at weeks. So if anybody's looking to DCA in the first several weeks of it launching and the bridge going live, it is only going to be through Pulse Ramp. And your DCA strategy, again, that is solely reliant on you. So maybe, at the very start, you don't want to speculate on the bridging platform and you only want to bridge in what you're willing to trade in that moment to do the DCA. But then you need to take into perspective that you've got gas fees on the other side. It comes down to how much value you have, so to speak, to do your DCAing and how much capital you have behind you. Because again, sometimes, bridging all in one would be more suitable to you. Each person that's in crypto has to do things that suits them, but you also have to suit your own risk tolerance. So if you can't take the risk and be okay with it, but Gary was right. Everything is speculation. Okay, so this is uncharted territory that hasn't been done before. There's multiple different things about PulseChain that we haven't seen. So every single thing is speculation. Ratio trading is highly speculative. That's why I keep saying, if you're going to do it, can you just learn how to check the liquidity, check the depth of it, make sure that there is liquidity. If you're looking at PulseX and you find that hard, go to Poseidon's tool that he utilized to show you how much liquidity is in those pools. So his tool that he created, you just go in there and you type in the ticker symbol for what you want, and it'll bring up every liquidity pool with that ticker symbol for you and the depth of the liquidity in there. You know, everything is speculative. Ratio trading is highly speculative, but I know a lot of people will say they're not going to do it, but they're going to go do it. So at least have the tools and resources and knowledge in front of you before you go doing it. You know, and again, bridging platforms, they're speculative. So it goes down to your risk tolerance as well.
Perfect. And then lastly, two things. Do you mind if I share this on YouTube when the time comes, the recording's done? Do you mind if I post it, or are y'all going to post it yourself?
Little bit like blockchain, decentralized. You can do with it what you will.
Appreciate. And then how for anyone listening right now on the panel, what would y'all say could be a good strategy getting into PulseChain and PulseX for those who did in fact miss these sacrifice phases? Because I know everyone says do nothing, and that's convenient for folks like us who were a part of the sacrifice for PulseChain and PulseX. It's very easy to do nothing. We've already got in. For those individuals who have not had a chance to participate during the sacrifice phases, maybe they just heard about it last week, maybe they just heard about it today. Do y'all have any recommendations or strategies as to how someone could possibly get into PulseChain and PulseX if we want to talk launch strategies, if that's something y'all would be open to discuss?
Yes, so some of the launch strategies are already gone. Some of them were to do with liquidity pools and certain tokens that were being forked over with some of the liquidity that was on the other side with the PLS. And again, that was a highly speculative play. Some people were buying odd ERC20 tokens for those pairs. But again, the AMM's bot isn't to provide people with liquidity to buy a bunch of Pulse. It's to correct the market caps of the tokens that are being forked over to account for the 1.2 million X supply of PLS versus ETH. So, you know, a lot of that other strategies are gone now because you can't know whether the fork has happened or not. Then when it comes to strategies moving forward, look at every other thing that's launched in crypto, right? So they all go skyrocketing in the first week, 2 weeks, and then they tend to have dips. So anything with an ICO phase or a free airdrop, they all go up and down, emotional traders and people buying and selling the news. So if you haven't got into Pulse and you haven't got into PulseX and you think that you're going to miss out, you're not. The way to miss out is to FOMO and buy straight in. Because again, initially the liquidity is going to be extremely thin, and the easiest way to wreck yourself is trading in thin liquidity, especially if you're trading in big heaps, right? So if the liquidity pool's only got 50,000 and you're even trying to move 5,000, well, you're going to eat a lot of slippage. And slippage, so like the price impact for the token, that's your average buying price, not necessarily what you're doing to the token. So if you're going to make a trade and it's telling you that you're going to have 10% price impact, that's 10% price impact for you of your buying power. So you're moving, that's your average buying price, okay? So that's a lot. 10% is a lot. So as a user, you need to know what you're doing. So when you looked at V3 and V4, it was less than 3% of the liquidity was redeployed. So now you're relying on market participants. You know, the biggest strategy is just watch what liquidity pools are made. Who bridges in HEX? Is there HEX pools being made? Is there DAI pools being made? Like, what are the whales doing? If you're sitting on Ethereum with USDC, you might have to trade a DAI before you bridge over because there might not be any liquidity on the other side for USDC. There might only be liquidity for DAI. So DCA and FOMOing, it all goes back to liquidity. And again, FOMO can get you wrecked. Don't go all in. Have a strategy of your own in place. DCA is dollar cost averaging, not put 50% of your bags in on day one because you're afraid that you're going to miss out on the opportunity. The first 3 months, you're early as early can be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, doing that for, DCA for 6 months to a year is what I've been suggesting to everyone. And you're going to be looking at a nice end result, if you will. So I'm in the same boat. I just wanted to share that for those of y'all who are in right now and you missed the sacrifice phase. That is a fantastic point. Don't FOMO in. And yeah, absolutely. Have a strategy for your own DCA strategy. But I think, Crypto Coffee made a great video talking the same thing. If you just DCA'd into HEX for the first year, 2 years, you could turn $10,000 into $100,000 or whatever it was. So that was a great point. But thanks for having me, folks. I'm going to step down and I'll be in the background. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, ATX, for coming up. Good questions. Next, we got Scott. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? Wow. Let's see. What am I going to say? I just want to bring a positive message and say, we're on the verge of like a new era here. I got a little bit of news. I'm a producer making the PulseChain anthem that's going to be released once PulseChain drops. So, look out for a nice high energy song that's got actual hexicans on it. For the hexicans that were in Las Vegas at the mansion party that I recorded, I put all y'all on the song. So that's going to be, help for promotion of the PulseChain system. And I just want to say thanks to all you guys, man. It's like incredible incredible to have become a part of this community, because there's so many smart people that have just raised me up, and I try to raise other people up too. So that's about it. I'll step down so you can have some other speakers up here, and just be safe out there, guys. This is going to be awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, man. Cryptic Life, what's going on?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, I had a question regarding strategies on LP. Would you guys, as far as doing LP once PulseChain is live, is that a pretty good strategy? Because my thing is I want to get into the incentive token. And I mean, I pretty much got a good bag of all the other three, with the Hex, Pulse, and PulseX, but I'm targeting incentive. So, and I've done LP in the past, but my thing is I don't fully understand the impermanent loss. I don't know if you guys are able to touch on that. Like, just say, for instance, I put 10 million Pulse and 10 million PulseX, if the ratio was 1-to-1, and I hold that for just say a year, and this volatility or whatever, it goes up and goes down and goes back up. If I break that a year later and it's on the upside, do I still have that 10 million on each side, or is that based on ratios?
Based on the ratios, right? So as people trade through the liquidity pool, right, they are changing the amounts of tokens on either side. So you might start, if you do a 1-to-1 ratio with two tokens, you might have 1 million on one side, 1 million on the other side. Now let's just say there's a lot of market activity. If those two tokens retain equal demand, then that balance will remain somewhat consistent, right? It'll never be exactly 1 million and 1 million. It'll be somewhere in a range, right? But if there's a lot more demand for one side versus the other, you then end up with a lot more of one token than you do the other token, okay? So your share of the pool could turn into 10 million of one thing and 100,000 or 10,000 of another thing, right? So your ratio has changed significantly based on the demand and how much trading has gone through that pool. Now, impermanent loss is if you were to add up the value of those tokens that you have in the pool and compare that to 1 million of each if you had just held them, what is the difference in that value, right? And that would be your calculation of any kind of gain or loss that you then have unrealized within that liquidity pool. It is possible, due to a lot of heavy trading, you could actually end up with less value than if you had just held, okay? But based on your strategy, this is where yield farming came in, right? So if you look back in 2020, when everyone was launching a copy of Uniswap, right, and everyone was yield farming, the whole point was farm another token that will offset the value of that impermanent loss. So net, you're still up because you're earning something else. You're farming something else with that LP value because you're taking the risk, but you're getting some other token as payments for that risk, right? And hopefully, no guarantees, that value that you're farming is greater than any potential losses you have unrealized within the pool. And one final point to really emphasize is impermanent loss is unrealized loss, okay? Because you haven't withdrawn liquidity yet. So you're not locked into it until you withdraw liquidity and take those tokens out. Then it's like you're realizing that loss or gain, for that matter, and you're locking yourself into that number of tokens, okay? So just keep that in mind.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't plan to break it anyway. I'll be watching, of course, but my whole thing is just to lock it in and, like I said, try to farm that incentive, because deep down, I just be thinking that could be something that would give me that reward, even though I'm getting that impermanent loss. So that pretty much answered the question. Appreciate you guys bringing me up, though, and inviting me to the space. I had a question earlier, but I had to drop off because I'm at work. So, but I'll go ahead and step down. I appreciate you guys for what you do.
Thanks a lot. Great question.
Hey, Timothy.
Hello there, Katie. Thank you for having me and for hosting this space. Someone had just asked about a launch strategy, and to be honest, I didn't have one until yesterday. I just didn't know what to do other than to just sit back and watch my bags grow. But I want to share my strategy real quick because it's fairly simple. It may sound too simple in case anyone can get any benefit from this. But Richard had said in a live stream, his suggestion was that when mainnet launches, what people ought to do is take their liquid ERC20 tokens and bridge them over into PulseChain and bond them with their free PRC copies, because now you've got a pair which you can earn fees on. So then the question came to me, what do you do with the fees? Well, what you do is you buy HEX on PulseChain with it. What do you do with the HEX? you stake it for 15 years through the Hedron contract so you can get free Hedron every day for the next 15 years. So then what do you do with the free Hedron? You use that to build and strengthen your liquidity positions in whatever tokens you favor so you can earn more fees. So then what do you do with those fees? You buy more HEX with it. You stake it for 15 years through Hedron so you can get more free Hedron to build and strengthen your liquidity positions so you can get more fees. So basically, the strategy that came to me is how to get paid to stake HEX and lock it all up for 15 years. And now I can't sleep because now I can hardly wait for Pulse to launch. Whereas for the last 2 years, that's just been whatever and just let it slide. But now it needs to launch.
Thanks for coming up and sharing, Timothy. Wolverine, you have your hand up. Should I be nervous?
That's a great strategy, Tim. I just wanted to add a comment about the liquidity providing. So if you are going to add liquidity to an exotic pair, for example, Pulse and PulseX, or any other type of exotic pair where the asset is bonded to something other than a stablecoin, then as long as you like both assets, then impermanent loss doesn't really matter because you're okay with having one or the other. So as long as you understand that, like if you love Pulse and PulseX equally, then it's okay to bond those two assets together because you're okay whether you have more of one than the other, just based on what happens with the trading. So I feel like, anyway, just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you like both things, who cares if you have more than one, less of the other, more of one, less than the other. I'd like to add that there's unique liquidity providing strategies with stablecoins as well, right? So imagine having 2 fully backed, fully redeemable stablecoins, or 3. You'll see 3 natively launched stablecoins on PulseChain. You'll see PXDC, you'll see USDL, you'll see Coast Stable Dollar. Well, what happens when you mint these things? You pair them together. And people are trading and routing. There's some automatic routing that happens even in PulseX through itself. And you're holding both of them, right? So when things get routed through one and one sells and now there's more in the pool of the other one, do you really care about that impermanent loss? First off, bots are going to come in and re-ratio it right back to 1-to-1 right behind. And you just collected the fees the entire time. All of the traffic of PulseChain gets routed through these things. So, if you're looking for some stability, but you want to sit there and earn some fees, and mitigate some impermanent loss, and you find stablecoins that are fully backed, fully redeemable, always worth $1 somewhere else, you could just pair those things together. It's really healthy for the ecosystem too. So consider that too. If you're scared to liquidity provide at all, practice on testnet. And maybe the easiest way to get your feet wet too is to grab a couple stablecoins and pair them right together when you're ready to go to mainnet. See what that feels like. Watch your fees accumulate. You're just constantly accumulating stablecoins from the fees. So just wanted to throw that out there too.
The singer? I think that's your name, yeah. The singer. Hey. PHEX Lab, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I was just gonna build on what I think a couple guys back was talking about. With people who weren't able to get in on sacrifice. There's this guy, I forgot his name, but he has a website called freepulse.io, and pretty much you could claim up to $200 of free pulse every hour when PulseChain launches. So if you don't have any pulse, you could definitely go there. It's a random amount that you'll get. It's kind of just like you click the button and it'll spin up a, system that'll pretty much tell you how much you might be able to claim for that, for that section of time. And then, you just go back every hour and claim some more for free. So there's another way to get some free pulse if you don't have any.
Yeah, so that's Victor. He was one of Richard's front-end devs. He's a pretty cool guy. That's actually his own bags that he's putting up into that faucet. Some people had a little bit of FOD around him because of some of the things that he chose to try and liven up his front end with, but don't take away from what he's doing for the community. Freepulse.io is a great asset that the community does have, and it is his own bags that he's putting up. It's a great onboarding tool as well. So like sometimes people just want to get on chain to buy a certain token, but they need some gas token or gas coin, I should say, to be able to make that trade. So just small things like that Victor's making possible, making onboarding smaller people easier, and onboarding your family, giving people a small amount of free tokens to be able to go utilize the network, to test it, to make them feel comfortable and want to come join. Faucets like that are something that is pretty critical on a brand new layer one, to be honest. So I like Victor and I like freepulse.io and I like what they're doing.
Hey, Katie, I'm here. I apologize. I was talking to myself. I didn't realize I was still muted a while ago. So I just wanted to, first of all, I want to say I appreciate what Gary had to say earlier. That's whenever I hopped on, and I could hear his comments. And basically, I've heard so much speculation amongst the different YouTubers and everything else, and I really appreciate them trying to provide commentary, trying to provide advice, but just keeping in mind that it is all speculation. It is all, when folks talk about this, if it's fact, we'll just see how it plays out. But I appreciate Gary's cool-headed and all that. So with regard to liquidity providing, I did kind of have a question about when it comes to PLS and PLSX. Would there? I guess I've heard people say sometimes whenever there's a lot of liquidity that doesn't provide room for momentum or for price to appreciate. Is that pretty much just whenever you're pairing it with something like a stable versus, because if it's PLS and PLSX, then it doesn't really matter if there's a lot more liquidity. Is that correct? Am I correct in that question and assumption?
I think what you're trying to ask is what helps the price move. So thinner liquidity definitely helps the price move, but that volatility goes in both ways. So I guess I hate to use it as an example, but HEX is a good example right now. So you watched over the last couple of weeks, the liquidity in HEX thin quite dramatically, to be honest. And that created more volatility. So that can be volatility to the upside or it can be to the downside. So thin liquidity helps price volatility, not necessarily the pairing. Thicker liquidity is harder to move the price. It takes more economic energy in that trading pair to move the price because of the ratio trading itself. But then it also just comes down to community and volume and people actually buying it. There's the theory about Hart's law with the bonding and the liquidity. So I did watch HEX for a few years, right? And it did seem to be decorrelated to the market. And there's actually correlation charts that you can watch it. So HEX sat at like 0 to a negative with correlation to Bitcoin for like a solid 2 years, like 1.3 to 2 years. It sat decorrelated for a very, very long time. And I think that's because its pairing was majority to USDC. And then you watch its pairing move over to ETH, and it did become a lot more correlated to Bitcoin. And the chart metrics reflect that. I've tweeted them out numerous times before, so there is correlation metric charts that you can actually see how strongly something is bonded to something else. I haven't checked HEX recently, but I would say it's relatively bonded currently because I'm pretty sure the ETH to HEX pair is more thicker at the moment than the USDC pair. So Hart's law will get tested on PulseChain when things are paired majority to Pulse. Because if Pulse goes up in value, you think the other things will as well. So Hart's law will truly be tested on PulseChain.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to kind of throw out there for folks to consider is, if people that have been involved in the sacrifices, either for one or both, people that have been involved in HEX, that maybe haven't seen the gains that other folks have that got in earlier, I'm sure that they have put a lot of thought into what they might do whenever they hit it big or whenever things launch. And a lot of folks that I've spoken to, and a lot of folks that you hear from, have a desire to want to give back and to do something great. Helping other people, serving other people in some way with their wealth, rather than just what are they going to do after they get their second Lamborghini or whatever. So looking for. There are folks out there, and maybe people on this call even they're thinking, man, what are some ways, and how would they be able to be generous, so to speak? We actually have a conference coming up next month. It's called Gen Con, and it's a very small, say kind of exclusive conference for folks that are interested in how they can do it wisely. Have some top level speakers coming in. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. If you're a person that are in that position, and you're saying, man, what do I do? To have this newfound wealth, and just kind of speaking into that, speaking some wisdom into that, in a smart way. So if you folks are interested, they can go to it's gencon2023.com and get more details. We just opened it up, so that's GEN like generosity, con like conference, and 2023.
Sorry, I don't know if one of the other panelists heard, but I think you asked a question. My Twitter is a little bit buggy, so I didn't quite hear you. So I don't know if Jesse or LV want to step in, or Tosh.
No, I think he just shared his information.
Paul, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask you, Katie, or anybody else on the panel, whether you knew whether there's any sort of advance in the sort of off-ramping and on-ramping of fiat. I don't. Forgive me if you spoke about this earlier and I didn't hear, but I just wondered if any of you had any knowledge of anything that might have been created for that.
Yeah, so there's multiple fiat on and off ramps. Coast is one of them. I can't give many details about them because honestly, I haven't checked back in to see what their development looks like or their fee structure, but they are a direct fiat on and off ramp that is through a stablecoin of their protocol. Other than that, it's bridging back to Ethereum or centralized exchange listings. Things like Portal X make it easier to bridge back to Ethereum, but yeah, it really comes down to when you're looking to offboard back into fiat, the time that you're looking to do it. Because, you know, as time goes by, more things come available. Initially, it'll just be bridging back out.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep, and everyone bear in mind with the Portal X swap.io, give us some time, right? We got to work with our partners, but we're connected into 64 blockchains right now. PulseChain is up pretty much next after it goes live. And you'll be able to come directly into PulseChain from 64 other chains directly. Maybe even bypass ETH completely, so you don't have to hit those gas fees on the way in.
Thank you so much.
So I seen you join B Lincoln. Just let everyone know that I'm probably just going to close the space soon and go to bed. But I do want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in. And I really enjoy these spaces. I enjoy the back and forth, and I find education in them too. So I hope other people do as well. But just remember, nothing's ever financial advice, and it's definitely all speculative. You know, there is no 100% guarantee that anything's going to play out. It is all definitely speculative. PulseChain as a whole is speculative, but it is also a once in a lifetime opportunity. So when we're saying, you know, slow down and take your time, don't let FOMO or emotion get in your way, that's so you guys don't miss out on that once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, ratio trading, you can make the wrong move, and then that leaves you wrecked, and then you feel gutted, especially when you see the price action go through. So understand what you're doing and understand the aspects involved in what you're doing, because the last thing you want to do is make the wrong trade at the wrong time, knowing that, you know, even a couple of days later you could have made the right trade and profited ridiculously from it. So look at other blockchain launches and look at the 3-month chart or those launches and realize that some of the best buying opportunities are in the first month, and it's not necessarily in the first week. So everyone should really, you know, take their time and make sure they know what they're doing. B Lincoln, do you want to go?
Yeah. Has there been any information put out on any exchanges that are going to support PulseChain?
So yeah, in backrooms there is. I'm not going to drop names because I guess that's a bit of an expectation and pressure on them. But there is multiple exchanges that are looking at listing PulseChain. Yes. I mean, my team and I did a Twitter space with a centralized exchange to teach them about PulseChain and talk about HEX further with them. So they were extremely interested, if that gives people an idea. You know, there is a lot of people asking. Richard's dropped names of centralized exchanges before that were asking about it. I think it's safe to say, especially if it launches in the next 7 days at the bottom of the bear without a bunch of noise around it, that there will be quite a lot of centralized exchange listings.
That makes getting in and out fairly easy.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing? First and foremost, I just want to say thanks for Katie and Jesse and Toshi Flow for orchestrating this space. I think this is a fantastic space. I just got in because I just woke up because I'm a degenerate. But I just want to say that the most important thing to basically piggyback on what Katie was saying was that people tend to take advantage in this space, scammers, tend to take advantage during two pivotal components of human emotion. And that's generally euphoria and it's generally depression. And you're seeing it now with so many scams launching on Ethereum every single day, just because people are starting to get desperate and people are going to ape into anything that they see. Now, why is this related to PulseChain by any way? Because, as I'm sure many scammers know or have their eye on, that there's over 1,200 people in this Twitter Spaces, that most of the hex streamers have more. They have more. What the hell's it called? They have more engagement than streamers with 90K subscribers when they only have 10 or 5. And the point being here is that, to piggyback again, what Katie was saying was that you have to understand that, like, during this time, the first week, people are going to come out with scam links. People are going to come out with phishing links to associated projects that have no bearing whatsoever, that are just to drain your wallet, because people are so overly zealous about joining in that euphoria clogs their judgment. And by doing that and clogging their judgment as a result of that, well, by the way, can anybody hear me? So I'm in the car.
Got you.
Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So people are going to try to scam you, especially in the first couple of weeks when euphoria runs rampant, especially when all the influencers are going to come in and like you even see like Rand Noir, whatever his name is, making streams about Hex and PulseChain already and many others. So all I'm saying is, first and foremost, don't give in to the cognitive euphoria. Be patient and don't be stupid. And because one mistake
can drain your entire wallet. Like one mistake, one stupid mistake, and then you're screwed for eternity, basically. So I've seen it happen before. I've seen it happen in other projects that I've been in, where people will come out publicly and say that they wanted to get involved in a project and then they couldn't because they clicked on a phishing link at a time where an important announcement came out. And if you have no strategy, the best strategy would more than likely be just sit back and watch the fireworks. At least in my opinion, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I've asked numerous people to ask me what my strategy is. I ain't doing nothing. I'm just sitting back. I'm not buying. I'm not ratio trading. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting back. So, I think that's the safest bet for people who aren't well acquainted with what happens with the imprudence of cognitive euphoria in a space of a lot of thieves and crooks.
Yeah, you are right, Corey. But I think one key takeaway to everyone in the room is if you don't have a strategy, or if you listen to this space and you're questioning your strategy, to go back and reevaluate it now, to think about different variables, to go do some more research and look into other things and simple things as well, right? So if you don't know liquidity very well, or DEX tools, right? Looking at DEX tools and look at the Ethereum to ERC20 pairs and consider 1%, right, being redeployed into PulseX as a liquidity to trade in between. Those things are going to bring you the most value when you're going to, make your own strategies up. So the key takeaway would be think about everything, reach out to some other people, some speakers that were on the panel. LV is great at liquidity. I wouldn't even bother talking about liquidity when he's in the room. There's people in the community that you can reach out to if you have questions, because it's better to ask a question that you think might be stupid than to not ask and get yourself wrecked, because there's no dumb questions in crypto. There's just not. Every question is smart because it's a question that you need an answer to. Again, as part of the reason why I talk so much, I'm happy to be wrong, and I admit that I'm wrong sometimes, but if I didn't speak vocally, I wouldn't be corrected, and I wouldn't be as educated as I am, and I wouldn't have people teaching me all day. So I find a lot of value in it. So if you're nervous or you're newer to crypto, start speaking up and getting, opinions and perspectives from other people, because that really does have the most value in it, is when you start talking to other people in this space. And I probably wouldn't go talk to other people in other communities, but the Hex community is pretty solid. Most people that you talk to in here are very genuine. They don't want ill will against you. They just want to help you. So be careful who you're talking to as well, but definitely, ask people. Hey, Lincoln, do you want to go, and Corey? And then after you two, I'm going to shut the space down.
I just wanted to add on that with, people stepping up and talking. Don't be afraid to, because, your question, even people that have been doing this a long time, maybe got their head too far into it, and you're asking something that's a little more simple, and it makes them step back and think. So, your question that you might find dumb might spawn something for somebody else. So, all the information you can get out there and get people talking about is always good.
I want to throw something out there too. With all this excitement and PulseChain right around the corner, don't forget Mother's Day on Sunday.
Katie, do you happen to know, or anybody on this panel happen to know, if Token Sniffer is going to be compatible with PulseChain? That is a very tool to figure out if understand. Reached out to Token Sniffer. If they're going to be compatible with PulseChain. Check out please. Katie?
So I can't hear Corey, if anyone else can, but I can't.
Yeah, so he was breaking up a lot, but he was asking about Token Sniffer and other projects. I don't know if that's going to exist on day one. I don't know if or another thing.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, Corey, we can hear you. But I think the answer is we don't know, right? We don't know when these things will start supporting PulseChain, if at all.
Okay, yeah, I figured I'd ask because, Token Sniffer is a very, very good tool for ERC20s, for Binance, whatever the hell they're PAP20s, whatever the hell they're called. So it would be definitely a good idea. I'll try to reach out to them, because I've been using Token Sniffer over the last couple of days just to learn a little bit about how to check for different malicious contracts and stuff like that. I guess I'll reach out to them. I know, Katie, you've been doing so much work, so I'll reach out to them and see if they can actually support PulseChain as well. Because I know they support a few blockchains, and I think that this is paramount to have as a tool, because I know Pulse Police are very busy and they do so much work, but it would be awesome to have a backup that's able to show people, what contracts being deployed on PulseChain, whether it's going to be a honeypot, whether there's a buy and sell tax, whether the liquidity is locked, whether the contract is renounced, all that fun stuff. So I'll reach out to Token Sniffer and see what they can do. I'm hoping they'll do it, because once PulseChain launches, it's going to be a boatload of scams. So I'll see what I can do.
So DEX tools, Dex Tools is already going to support PulseChain, and they do the same thing. Dex Tools has whether the liquidity is locked, what the buy and sell tax is, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, good news there.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and for the people that came up and brought value. Appreciate all of you, and let the euphoria get to you. It's exciting, just don't be emotional traders, but it's been 2 years waiting, and the next, 2 years is extremely exciting for our community. So don't be afraid to squeal, because I probably will. Thank you for everyone that tuned in, and congratulations for sticking it through the bear market and sticking it with Richard Hart. And I wish you all the wealth and happiness over the next few years. Be safe.